a little longer, get the full quorum here. But we're going to start off with Deborah, if you would, please call the roll.
Please acknowledge by saying present. Senator Parker,
Here.
Representative Robertson, Dr. Baker, Senator Blackwell, Senator Boyd,
Here.
Senator Bryan, Wendy Clemens, Representative Creekmore,
Here.
Dr. Damon,
Here.
Dr. Atney, Heather Garrett, Dr. Hogue, Dr. Johnson,
Here.
Sarah Jones, Dr. Medeiros, Representative McGee, Kate McMillan, Heidi Nelson, Representative Scoggin,
Here.
Linda Stewart, Julie Thornton, Jonathan Trickley,
Here.
John Robert Walker, and Dr. Weir. We have quorum.
Grading, good morning. What we kind of have been doing through this process is we've been trying to look and trying to get every perspective that we possibly can get concerning mental health. And we are pleased this morning to have my sheriff from DeSoto County as one of the presenters to give his perspective. I haven't been, and I mentioned this morning, I wouldn't be doing introductions, but I will share this because he probably will be very vague in his introduction of himself. Thomas Tuggle has served the state for many, many years. You know, he served Melota and has trained probably more officers in not just Mississippi, but in the South area than anyone I can think of over time. He retired from his role, you know, at Melota, and ran for sheriff in DeSoto County last year and just barely won. And I'm kidding when I say that, but we're proud to have him as a sheriff, and he's got his team here. So we're looking for his insight on how law enforcement can work with us and with mental health to make some improvements. So without any further ado, Sheriff, if you would, just tell us a little bit about your background. I kind of teed it up for you, but give us a little more background and we'll move into your thoughts for the morning. So thanks for being here.
Good. Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Great. I have a tendency sometimes to talk a little loud, and I think that goes back to my training background. So if I get a little too loud, somebody just say amen, and I'll tone it down just a little bit. Thank you, Senator Parker, for having me this morning. I want to thank this committee for showing your interest in the program that we're trying to get started in DeSoto County, but most importantly, investing in our future, which is our youth. With me today, my team is Chief Deputy Justin Smith, Major Juan Martinez, the Executive Officer, Captain Tommy Callahan, he is over our school resource officers, Lieutenant Antoine Curtis, he is over our school resource officers, and we have two special guests with us today, Dr. Mary Young, who's representing T-Mobile, who we're looking to establish a partnership with in this venture, and we have Mrs. Tawana Williams, she is the Director of Mental Health for the DeSoto County Schools. Thank y'all so much for being here this morning. Myself, as the Senator said earlier, I'm Thomas Tuggle. I am the Sheriff of DeSoto County. Retired from the Mississippi Highway Patrol after 26 years. I retired actually 27 years. I retired as a Lieutenant Colonel. I am a United States Marine with 2 tours in Japan, and I finished up with a combat tour in the Middle East. I've got 33 years of law enforcement experience. 23 of those years have been training adults. Those are law enforcement officers from all over this state and all over the country. These are adults that have their own set ways that we were very, very successful in changing our outlook and making them productive citizens in our community. We can do the same with our kids. Our goal is to have mentors in every grade in our county, in every grade, starting with the fourth grade all the way up to the eighth grade. These mentors that are assigned to these fourth graders will stay with those fourth graders all the way up into their eighth grade year. And then they will rotate back down and pick up another group of fourth graders and walk them through. What will they be doing? They will be mentoring these kids about patriotism, being productive members of society, but most importantly, teaching them about respect, not only respect for themselves, but respect for this country. If we do not influence these youth before they get to the eighth grade, it no longer is considered an opportunity, it becomes a challenge. I know that we're pressed for time, so we're going to roll through the process with our presenters, and then I will definitely come back to answer any questions. I want to bring up our first presenter, Lieutenant Antoine Curtis.
Good morning. As he stated, I'm Lieutenant Anton Curtis, and I'm over the SRO division. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about our team. These are some of the men and women in our division, and we make up the SRO division at DeSoto County Sheriff's Office. These are some of the requirements that are required by the state that we have to go through in order to be a certified school resource officer. And we cover the majority of the schools in our county. And we split it up into two districts. District 1 being the west side of the county, District 2 being the east side of the county. And District 1 is supervised by Sergeant Daniel Pounders. District 2 is supervised by Sergeant Jeremy Haywood. And this district here, we have schools up north that's in both districts, and it's supervised by Sergeant Zach Dickerson. So this is a little bit about the history of our SRO division. In 2021, we only had 11 SROs, 1 sergeant and 1 lieutenant. And in 2022, that increased. We added 11 schools, 11 SROs, and 1 sergeant also. And then in 2023, we added another school and 8 SROs. And in that year, we wanted to put 2 SROs in the high schools and 2 SROs in the middle school. We also have 2 SROs at one of our elementary schools because of the location. And this year, this summer, we just added another school. We added 6 schools, 13 SROs, another sergeant, and 2 mentors. That brought our number up to 47 total SROs in our division. This here, what you're looking at, the breakdown of our schools, we have 29 schools, 3 of them are private schools. We have 29 schools that we cover. The perception of our profession has changed throughout the years, and we set goals in our division to try to change that now. And as you can see, the main one we want to focus on is mentoring. We feel if we can mentor these kids, we can provide a better tomorrow for DeSoto County and hopefully the state of Mississippi. And at the top of the last slide, you saw bridging the gap. When we talk about bridging the gap, we want to bridge the gap with these students, whether we're in the schools or after school activities, whether it's football games, basketball games, we want to be interactive with these kids. And also we want them to feel comfortable talking to us about problems they may be facing, whether it's personal problems or problems related to the school. We also have a junior deputy academy where we bring 100 kids in for a week, and we show them the insights of the sheriff's office so they get to see what all we do. And we have fun with them, but mainly we mentor them. We just want the kids to understand that we are in these schools for discipline. We are there for discipline, but we're also there to protect them. We're there for support. And we want them to understand that we are human. And we want to bridge the gap on all levels, whether that's the cafeteria worker, the janitors, the teachers, the principals, but mainly we want to connect with those counselors. It's huge that we connect with the counselors because they know the challenges that these kids face, whether it's building the relationships with the students. That's important. That helps us protect them. They won't talk to us unless they know us. These kids know this fight that's about to make an action shoot. So if they talk to us, we'll be able to be proactive versus reactive. We may be the only positive role model that these kids have. They may not be getting that at home. So we need to be able to teach these kids how to deal with, how to overcome adversity, or how to deal with everyday stresses of life. We may have to educate them on all levels also. As he said, we want to start in 4th grade, but we can reach back from elementary kids, teach them how to dial 911, or teach them about gun safety. And then we have our middle school kids, our high school kids, that's about to start driving. Teach them about traffic laws or how to conduct themselves on traffic stops, maybe even constitutional laws. And in my conclusion, we are law enforcement officers, we're teachers, we're educators, we're counselors, and we're mentors. And according to the National Association of School Resource Officers, that's what make up a school. And I turn you over to Captain California.
So as Lieutenant Curtis said, I'm Captain Tommy Callahan, and I'm the captain over the Sheriff's Office, which includes the school resource officer. So what Lieutenant Curtis just spoke to you about, our regular SRO. And as you see, the National Association of School Resource Officers, like you said, this is the recommended percentage of time that a man or woman in the school should spend doing their daily interactions. 20%, 40, and 40. It's been our mission at the DeSoto County Sheriff's Office since 2021 to provide a safe learning environment by developing and maintaining relationships. Here to focus on today. The goal of the mentorship program is just as it says. We want to create a better quality of life. Thank you. So like I said, the goal of this mentor program is to create a better quality of life for the citizens of DeSoto County, Mississippi, by instilling these fundamental values in our youth at that critical age development time. What you see here is what the men and women in the schools today measured their performance by. We have a Microsoft data form that we input all daily interaction types into, and that's how we measure our performance. And what you see here is all of Lake Cormorant schools. And as you see, this is for the last full month of school of May of 24. They were able to mentor 26 kids, which equaled 8%. And in addition to all their other daily interactions that they're required to do as far as educating the students and keeping the school and the staff safe. All of our Horn Lake schools, they were able to mentor 65 children, which equaled 11%. Lewisburg School District, see the numbers were 82, which came out to be 18% of time spent mentoring. Our South Haven schools, 37%, 37 children mentored, coming to only 10% of time spent mentoring. I show you those numbers to show you this. That 40% that's recommended, we're coming in as a regular SRO, only able to spend a little under 12% of our time mentoring the children. And if we want to change the future of our students and provide a safer community and better tomorrow for all of us, and hopefully our whole state and leading to our nation, it's important that we get someone in there that's able to spend 100% of their time doing it in connection and collaboration with the school counselors, really focusing on the kids that are going through struggles in life that really need it. That's our goal. What you see here is the data that was compiled for 6 years by our IT department at the Sheriff's Office. And the numbers are pretty staggering. On the far right, if we don't reach a child by the age of 15, or on average the 8th grade, they have a 42% chance of becoming an adult offender in the justice system. Those numbers are high. And so that's why it's critical to have someone that's going to reach these children before they get to that age of 15 or the 8th grade, which is on average beginning in the 4th and going up through the 8th. This also includes our school infractions. That's levels, we pulled data that was levels 3 through 5, which in the schools that could lead to criminal actions as well. That is your possessions, assaults, fights, and things of that nature. And we are pulling data for the current school year that we just completed, and those early numbers are telling us that we're on track to see the same numbers that you see before you on this graph. As of year to date, juveniles that live in DeSoto County only that have been booked into our juvenile justice system is at 304. In the previous graph that I just showed you, that was DeSoto County students only. We eliminated any student that lived outside of DeSoto County and also the tri-state area, including Memphis. What a mentor 100% of the time would be able to do a lot more is what Deputy Williams that you see here, I'm gonna share a short success story with you that she was able to do as a regular SRO at Horn Lake High School. Young Kennedy was a student that came to school every day, mentally stressed out because she was missing the important things of love and just care at home. Now, Miss Kennedy came from a family, mother and a father, but she was one of many siblings. And she would come to school angry, no respect for authority, law enforcement, fighting, making bad grades, skipping school. But Deputy Williams was able to take time with her and instill those fundamental values in her and put her on a trajectory that really changed her life for the positive. She was coming to school more. She had respect for authority. She was not getting in fights at school any longer. She was doing her schoolwork. She was respecting herself as a young lady. And if we could put someone in the school to do that 100% of the time, it would be so contagious, because this little bit that we've seen here in our schools, it is contagious because the kids, they long for that. They want that void that they're missing in their life. And that's what we aim to do with this program, is fill just some of these traits here that you see on the screen that will put a young man or woman on a better success pathway for life. So now at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Mary Young, and she's going to speak to you further on some of the importance of mentoring kids at this age.
Good morning. Just a little bit about myself. I'm an educator, 30 years, former teacher, principal, school superintendent, and it's an honor to be here this morning to be able to present. So just briefly, a couple of things that I'd like to speak on, and it really speaks to just the impact that mentor programs have. And so when we talk about studies in terms of the mentorship program, nationally, students who met regularly with their mentors are 55% more likely to enroll in college. 78% more are volunteering regularly. 90% are interested in becoming mentors themselves. That speaks to just the impact. When we talk about mental health and academic benefits, the numbers speak for themselves. Being able to know that 45% of the students, they enroll in higher ed, 81% of those students that are mentored participate in extracurricular activities. Even when we look at their attendance, students who are being mentored, they come to school more because they have something to look forward to. And they also have that piece when it talks about just the other layer of accountability outside of what the school normally does. The need for a mentoring program, definitely, as all of the information that has been shared before, it is necessity. It is a necessity. 1 in 3 young people will grow up without a mentor, which highlights the critical need for mentorship like our program. When we look at just where we are in DeSoto County, the student population is very diverse. But even within that, when I looked at the Mississippi Department of Education, as an educator, that's where I'm going to go. And so 50% of students in DeSoto County are low-income families. When we look at where they are, there's a need for, again, this mentoring program. When we look at where they are in terms of some of the challenges, specifically, I'm going to go and speak to US Census Bureau, 19.6% of the children in the state of Mississippi are in poverty. When we look at where they are, proficiency-wise, as a state, 34% of our 4th graders are proficient in reading and 26% in math. Having a mentor greatly increases those numbers in terms of their academics as well, not just mental health, but also academics. There's an increased engagement. There's an increased percentage in grades. There's an increased percentage in attendance. In addition, when we look at just a study that was done by the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, one of the things that they discovered was students who are mentored are 52% less likely to skip school, 37% less likely to skip class. When we look at the students who are a part of mentorship program long-term, The numbers, you see an increase in high school graduation, better mental health, career readiness, and the list goes on and on. When we look at those short-term economic impacts, we speak to the increase of employment opportunities. We speak to the boost in local economy, improved academic performance, and community engagement. Long-term economic impact, we speak to having a higher educational attainment, an improved workforce quality, and a reduction in crime rates, as been stated before, long-term health benefits, and economic mobility. And I will just add, looking at some of the recent studies that are out, when we look at students who drop out of high school, it impacts a community's local economy by $600,000. Every child impacts that local community by $600,000 when they drop out. And so looking at a mentorship program, being able to have an opportunity to work with students from elementary, it's not just the impact when we talk about K-12, but we're talking about a long-lasting impact to them as well as their community. So now we're going to have Ms. Tawana Williams.
Good morning. I'm going to talk to you about what we're currently doing in DeSoto County. As Sheriff Tuggle stated, I'm the Director of Mental Health Services. I've been with our school system since 2006. I oversee our mental health department, but I also oversee our 82 school counselors. So DeSoto County offers a variety of services within our mental health department. And those services include, we currently have 14 mental health therapists. All of our therapists are state board licensed clinicians. We began our program in 2018 with only 4 state licensed clinicians. The increase of referrals has allowed DCS to expand our mental health therapist team. And by the end of year 3, we were averaging at least 1,000 plus students that receive our services. So from 2022 to present, we have served approximately 2,000 students across our district. So our mental health therapists assist with placement in acute care and residential facilities. I also have a district social worker, and currently we added a mental health therapeutic interventionist that works one-on-one with our students. So I kind of want to talk about what we do and what those services have looked like and the number of students that we've seen. So we perform risk screeners. We have a very collaborative approach with our school counselors. So in 2023 and 2024, we performed 1,041 risk screeners on students. In 2022 and 2023, that total was 1,160. And as you could see, that decreased a little bit this past year. Out of those students, in those students that received risk assessments, we had a total of 156. We noticed that our preventative measures of using risk screeners allowed us to know exactly what our students were in need of. And so in 2022 and 2023, that number was a little bit higher at 195. And so out of those students in 2022 and 2023 and 2024, we had a total of 46 students in which we referred to inpatient treatment, and those students received services. Our district has really set the tone for where we see mental health going, what we want to do, and how we want to collaborate with our stakeholders in our community. I'm very proud of the program and the framework that we've put forward in having that collaborative approach. And we know that that collaborative approach also extends to our community. Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the end of our presentation. But I do want to say this here. We do have the support of several school board members, to include Sheila Riley and Gerald Wheeler, along with our school superintendent, Corey Usselton. But one of the things that we will implement in our program is every one of the students that we mentor will know the 14 leadership traits, which include judgment, justice, dependability, initiative, decisiveness, tact, integrity, enthusiasm, bearing, unselfishness, courage, knowledge, loyalty, and endurance. We will instill those traits in all the students that we come in contact with because we believe this: if we don't invest in today's youth, tomorrow has no future. At this point, Senator, I yield it back to you, sir.
Thank you for a dynamic presentation touching on a number of different subjects. I do want to just kind of say a couple things, and then, of course, as always, we're going to open it up to questions. Again, the purpose of this is to try to find ways to fill these gaps in mental health. And just as background, as they do their presentation, for those of you who are not familiar with DeSoto County, we're a very large county as far as our school population. I think we have about 35,000 students, in our school system, which makes us unique, and it makes and we have one school system for this large area, one superintendent. And so we've become, I think, over time, very good at working together on things, and so a lot of the things we talked about in this task force encourage collaborations and encourage, groups working together. And I think sometimes, hearing this type of presentation shows you what the collaborative effort can actually achieve. One interesting thing that was brought up just at the end by I've forgotten your name, Ms. Williams. We talked at length yesterday about the importance of mental health screenings, and there was some mention about, how we could have more of those done. And, there was actually a suggestion that, all students need to have some type of mental health screening. How could we make that happen? Could you share, how, in your example, I think you mentioned a little over 1,000, were done last year. How do you target and find the, again, I'm guessing out of 35,000 students, how do you pare it down to the ones who are at risk? And how do you, through your process at, through education, identify those? And do we need to be screening every child? Or if we don't, how do we lower that number and identify the ones at most risk and most need for the screenings?
So currently, we have really good procedures in place. Everything that we do it through our school counseling department. And so what we have done is we've put procedures in place to determine what factors would warrant an actual screener. Currently, those things look like they could be overt or covert things like gestures. They could be writings. It could be really understanding and notice the different dispositions of a child. So really when teachers and faculty are establishing that rapport, really knowing what's changed with the child, but oftentimes it's those at-risk behaviors that we notice and things that changes in academics, there could be changes in behaviors. Currently, we're looking at more overt behaviors, so behaviors that would appear to be at risk in the school environment. When those things happen, we work collaboratively with the parent, and we come in and we work with that child, and we perform just a 5-question risk screener. All of our counselors are trained to do that. They take their professional discretion, and then we work collaboratively with our mental health department. Since we have our own mental health therapists, we get permission and gain permission from our parents to be able to do that, and then we provide whatever resources are necessary. So currently, we aren't screening all of our students, but we make parents aware of that service, and we really train our staff on the things that they should look for. We do several trainings with our entire staff, and that includes teachers.
And so this question is probably for you and for the sheriff. Is that, so how do you see this SRO? How do you see this SRO program, starting in the 4th grade through the 8th grade, being used or helping to identify the students that were just mentioned here? Because we're looking to find out how do we find out which kids need this, and it seems to me that with your idea on the mentorship program, that you want to be a resource to help come along with the counselors to help identify and define maybe the most at-risk children. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, sir. Right after I took office, I think I got an email from one of my constituents, stakeholders in the community, came through her church. There was a kid that was in the 5th grade down at DeSoto Oak Grove Elementary, had some behavior issues. And she said, this is a great opportunity for you to get into the school. So it was a pilot program for us. So Major Martinez set it up, made connection with the school teacher, and I was allowed to go into that class where that troubled student that had been identified, that troubled student was there. So I went there. The class didn't know I was there to actually try to establish a relationship with the troubled youth. I went in to introduce myself, talk about law enforcement, talk about some of those traits I mentioned, and then I had a little game with them. The game was they had to come up in front of the classroom and stare at the wall, the back of the classroom where it says believe. They had to stare at the word believe for 45 seconds without flinching, without laughing, without making any body facial expressions whatsoever. And if they did that, and I called 6 of them, if they did that, I took $5 out of my pocket and I put it over in the teacher's pot so that she can buy them some muffins or whatever. That's that buy-in that we were trying to establish. So they all agreed that, hey, I picked 6 to do it. I made that troubled youth, the one that I was actually called for, I made him my timekeeper. So now we've established that partnership. He feels like he's part of a team. So he operated the clock. I brought the first student up, was a male. He stood there 45 seconds, knocked it out, put $5 in the pot. All 5 students, male and female, till we got to number 6, were able to stand there for 45 seconds and stare at the word believe. And then the last female came up and she started laughing in 40 seconds. She only had 5 seconds to go, but she broke down. But because she had on because one of her classmates had on I'm a Team Toggle shirt, I gave them the $5 anyway. So, but to sum that up, what I told the class was if they can stand in front of their classmates, waving and hollering and focus for 45 seconds without any type of gestures for 45 seconds, they can do it for an entire school year. And that was part of what we were doing. And they all completed and they got the money. That established an opportunity for me to get in that classroom and mentor this young man that was actually having problems. And one of the leadership style that I used was called contingent rewards. If you do this for me, I will do this for you. Now, it doesn't work in corporate world because it's just not there, but it works with youth because it established a buy-in of trust. So my challenge to them was this: if they could increase their GPA, grade point average, collectively as a group by 6 points by the end of the year, we're talking 5 months, that we, the sheriff's office, would come back and take that entire class to Buffalo Wild Wings. Right then and there. Marcus, they called him first. Marcus was the little guy that I was called on. We're studying and we're starting tonight. And they went to work. They was working with him, and periodically we step in and check on him. And they wanted those Buffalo Wild Wings. And the teacher called me a week before school and said, Sheriff, you need to come by because everybody increased their GPA by 6 points. So Major Martinez dug in the pocket, went to Buffalo Wild Wings, and we brought those wings to those students. They wanted us to go to the 6th grade with them, but I don't know how we're gonna work that because there's only one of me, but we're gonna put our mentors in it. And these guys will go with these students and establish their relationship. Now we have trust. Now we can tell these kids whatever we want to because we did the carrot thing first. Now we can move the goalposts and now we can have deep results when it comes to behavior. So those are some of the ways that we can identify them. That comes from teachers calling us. And we're putting our guys around those ones that are troubled and we work with them. Don't go directly at them, establish a relationship, and then we start influencing them. So we've already seen that success, and that was done in 6 months. Imagine what we can do in a whole year.
Exactly. And I think one thing that we've seen is that we've tried a lot of things in the state. A lot of times we try them and we don't get the feedback of whether or not they're working or not.
Yes.
So if we try a lot of things and we don't know if they're working or not, how do we do that? One thing that was compelling to me about your presentation was some of the data that you're keeping right now. If we did a program like what you're describing, do you think you could get us the data, and get us the information to show us that results are coming from this?
Absolutely.
In mental health, I'll just share, I will say that a lot of this task force has been about how do we get the resources, how do we get things done, and a lot of the discussion has been about taking care of kids who already have, I think, significant problems. But much like we've done with other programs in the state, to your point, if we can do things to try to head the problem off on the front end, I think that will produce that $600,000 a year, benefit kind of down the road. So how do you think you could get those metrics and report that for that type of group?
So we already have those and we're collecting them now. You just tell us when you need them and where, and we can get those to you. Now, the data for 2024 is not complete. It's not complete, but once we get that data, we can get it to you. And the data that was presented this morning, we can get that to this entire committee. We can get that ASAP if you need to, sir.
Very good.
Yes.
I'll turn over my co-chair first, Representative Creekmore.
Thank you. Sheriff Tuggle, I'd like to get one of those Team Tuggle shirts.
We can get you one, sir.
As a matter of fact, you have a very impressive team. Thank y'all for being here.
Yes, sir.
What is the difference between a mentor and a SRO officer?
School resource officer, you want to talk, Cap? Okay.
So the difference is, like we showed it in the presentation, a school resource officer, they're going to spend their daily interaction types at the school, educating the students, protecting the school, and being a mentor as well. So they're pulled in a ton of different directions, and then whatever else gets thrown at them throughout the day while they're doing that. Now, a mentor, they're there to do mentorship 100% of the time. They're not going to be in the school checking the doors to make sure that they're locked, checking the classroom doors to make sure that they're locked, patrolling the campus, handling disciplinary issues in collaboration with the principals at the school that result in criminal violations and things of that nature. So that mentor is just going to mentor 100% of their time in the school.
Is the mentor a police officer?
Yes, sir, they are. They will be certified school resource officers, certified law enforcement officers that have to meet the same criteria as the other men and women in the school.
Okay, thank
and
you.
at the sheriff's office.
Now, every SRO and every mentor is a police officer, so therefore you will have, or you may already have received mental health first aid training.
Yes, sir. The majority of our school resource officers are currently crisis intervention team trained. And in collaboration with Ms. Williams, we are scheduling at this time for mental health training for the remainder of every man and woman in the division.
All right. And are the community mental health centers active in your school system as well?
Yes, sir, they are.
CMHCs? And
Yes,
so y'all collaborate with them as well? Okay,
Yes, sir.
very good. And do any of your school systems have a modified calendar like Corinth and maybe 30 other districts where they, or is it more the traditional where they have the summer off?
It's traditional.
Okay. And if any of your team has an opinion, on mental health, would the modified calendar aid or deter mental health in children? Your gaps would be less. You wouldn't have that 3-month gap for the summer, and you would see them more on a regular basis. Do y'all have an opinion? Would that make a difference in?
It would be, Ms. Williams, would you like to come up, maybe elaborate on that? But we are currently doing summer programs
Okay.
that are keeping us engaged with our students in the schools. But without that gap, I'll let Ms. Williams, she can elaborate on that a little bit better.
So we provide services for our students in the summer. We identify those students throughout the year that will continue to need services throughout the summer. And if that gap exists, then they may not be where they were at the end of the year. So we continue to provide those services. We have only a couple of therapists, but we provide those services throughout the
So
summer.
you do see the importance of keeping them engaged.
Yes,
So
we see the importance, especially we look at where they are in their treatment planning and how they're doing. And then some students won't adjust very well, especially going from grade to grade. So we do some transitional things mentally throughout the summer.
yes, ma'am. And I do find it interesting that the school counselors are under your mental health department.
Yes, so we have when we established the department, we did it as a collaborative approach. We also work with, I heard you mention the community-based mental health providers, but we also work with about 5 other providers, including the University of Mississippi. So we do have other collaborative efforts that we do because we have so many students, that's in Parker stated.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
I want to add something to that. Our mentorship program is 365 days. That goes throughout the summer with our mentors. But the other thing is these mentors now will be sitting in these grades with students. They'll bounce around all over the county, learning math over again, English. They'll be sitting in that classroom. So we've got a lot of benefits to that. Discipline, structure, who's gonna, this guy's sitting there. They will be dressed similar to what I'm dressed without the tie. So we're gonna advertise this because it's another benefit to this. We're gonna advertise that DeSoto County has got plainclothes police officers spread out through the entire school district. So anybody that wants to attack one of our schools and do something stupid like an active shooter, it's like a Russian roulette. Is this the school where that aren't? That's pretty much the benefit of some of what we're doing also by mentoring our kids. We're also letting the criminal element know that we are throughout the entire school system. You just don't know where we are.
As far as the mentors, does the sheriff's department pay for that or the school system pay for that? How do you get compensated
As far as the training,
for the mentor? Who pays the mentor? Does it come out of your budget in the sheriff's department or?
yes, sir. We're digging deep and we got a good board, but at some time and point, the board's gonna say, hey, you can't get any more out of this onion.
Yeah.
So we'll have to find some type of alternate funding source to help us out. And this is a pilot program. I've got 40 sheriffs already called and say, hey, Thomas, we like the numbers. We don't have the resources you have, but please share your information with us and see if we can get established. So there are sheriffs already asking, how can they get it started in their county? At least 40 of them already approached us, and wanting us to help them.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So you have started the mentorship program?
Yes, sir. This would be the first full year. I played mentor for the first 6 months of the school year, my term. But now we actually will start with mentors this year, getting a full return on our investment. Our SRO has been the mentors in the past, but you can see they spend only 11% of their time mentoring, the other time doing other duties. But we will actually have full 100% people in the school that dedicated 100% to mentoring starting the school. They're already there, sir.
What grade, are you ramping those up? You starting them in fourth grade?
They're
and then
starting in the
moving them up,
fourth
or
grade,
how
and when
are you-
those guys move to the fourth grade, they go to the fifth grade, 2 more we gotta hire. And then all the way up until we get all 4 grades covered. And then those 8th grade mentors, once that group moves to their freshman year, they come and pick up another group of 4th graders and walk them through. We found that that'd be more effective because once these students establish a rapport and trust with them, they want that mentor around them. That's the one that picked the phone up and say, there's a gun in locker number 17. And working with T-Mobile, we're excited. T-Mobile's got some ideas that they can help us as far as students connecting and communicating with our mentors. We're looking forward to having them on board. And they just jumped up and said, hey, we'll help you in any way. So thank you, T-Mobile, for stepping up to the plate and being willing to assist us in achieving our goals.
So as you're starting this program though, are you starting it at the 4th grade level? And then that group's gonna follow through the 8th, or are you starting it in 4, 5, 6, all the way through 8th?
Yes, sir.
And so you're starting all the grade levels at one time in the mentor?
No, sir.
Or you're starting at 4?
4.
and then
By the
you
time we
move
get
up?
to the 8th grade, we'll have those performance numbers for you because those group of 8th graders would have had a mentor with them for 4 years. And we can get those numbers back. And then they'll move to their freshman year. And in most cases, if we're successful, there'll be no need to have mentors in high school because these kids will already have understood the value of respect, discipline, and just basic decency.
What is the cost that you see?
If you want to talk about
for-
that.
So this is a scalable program. I'm Chief Deputy Justin Smith. This is a scalable program. Right now, we're doing small scale because we do have budgetary constraints, sir. So right now we have 2 people and those 2 people will be bouncing out around all throughout the district at the 4th grade level, connecting with as many students as possible. So in a perfect world, this would be something where we had a mentor assigned to each grade level at each brick and mortar school to where that's where their home base is and they're assigned there. It's not financially feasible for us to be able to do that at this moment, but we're definitely rolling this out. So in a perfect world, it would probably be a pretty expensive program just to staff all the schools that we have. And less ideal situation, we could do this with as few as 6 or 8 people that are bouncing around at all of the different schools. And there's benefits and drawbacks to that. Obviously, there's financial benefits to doing a smaller scale, and there's a little bit of novelty in having somebody that's not there with them all the time. So they do look forward to the mentor coming into the classroom and being with them less frequently. The benefit of having one in each school is obviously we have that day-to-day interaction between the mentor, and that connection is going to get stronger between him and his students that he's working with. Does that answer your question, sir? This can get expensive.
Right.
I mean, it could be several $1 million for DeSoto County. I mean, we have 42 schools, so that's a lot of manpower.
So other questions from the committee? Yes.
Well, thank you. This was wonderful. And I had a question for Sheriff Tuggle and then Ms. Williams, I think. First of all, I really appreciate the data, and I appreciate that the data is tied back to school outcomes. And it's not just these children felt better, but they're going to school more. So that's wonderful. You have a wonderful partnership, and I'm amazed at what you're doing with having, it sounds like almost a self-contained mental health department within the district. And my thought is that in evaluating like how to scale your program and the work you're doing, it would be important in that model to look at how it partners with the district and the resources that are available through a program like that. They seem very interconnected. Am I
Yes,
seeing
ma'am.
that correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then I was wondering, your data on, I don't want any child to go to an inpatient facility ever. And I'm assuming that's what everybody would hope for, because I would hope they wouldn't need to. But your data seems to indicate the admission rate is really low. It's like 0.1%. Is that just the admissions that your staff helps with, or are you tracking throughout your district? Is that children that actually go? Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to add one question, one statement to this. The question was about being able to touch all of you. In DeSoto County, because we're 36,000 students and I think 47 plus schools in the county, that's huge. And that's a benefit to us because that mentor's got to hit every 4th grade school in the county. And that's a benefit because those students, let's just say he was at Oak Grove Elementary, this one mentor, and he's hitting all of his 4th grades. Those students miss him. So they look forward to seeing him when he rotates back around, and it creates that excitement of having him come back. Now, small counties, one mentor can hit all of his students in one day probably. And that's the benefit of having a small school district, but we have the benefit of having a large school district, which creates that excitement of actually establishing that friendship and partnership. And these kids are looking forward to see that rotation come back around.
Senator Bryan?
I was just thinking out loud about the DeSoto County District itself. And you mentioned there are 47 schools. How many high schools are there in DeSoto County?
8, sir. Well, if you want to count North Point, that'd be 9.
If we want to count what?
North Point. North Point's a private academy.
We'll say 8.
So 9.
But if you think about your school districts in other places, it's sort of an interesting number to be able to take a fraction of and think how that might work in a smaller district. I would say also that the analogy that comes to mind, which probably isn't exactly accurate, is that back when we had newspapers, if you had a big daily newspaper, you had a sports staff and all of these various functions. But there also was the guy that just owned the county weekly, and that guy did everything. So if you're looking at how something like this might be translatable to smaller districts, just like the guy that put out the newspaper all by himself, there might be shared responsibilities and all. But I think is at least when I listen to this presentation, I think of the districts back in Senate District 7, and I'm sure others do too, that the interesting thing to think about it is how this might be, something like this might fit in a smaller school district. The other thing I would say, Mr. Chairman, is that this is another example of things that schools do that don't involve education directly. And I think that sometimes we overlook the important functions in healthcare, mental health, or health of all types is one example in that you reach all the children in town because they're all at school. The other question I have for the sheriff and those with him is, did you or any of the people with you bring any $5 bills? Because, you know, $45 for 45 seconds, that's a pretty good hourly rate. And particularly if you could break it down into 45-second segments, because I think I can do right for 45 seconds. It gets sort of iffy but if we could work with 45-second segments, I could work with these folks.
I will share that I'm pretty confident that I've sat at this table and stared at the same spot straight ahead for 45 seconds before. And I think I could collect my $5 too. I think it's.
I was, did anybody
something
give you $5 for doing that?
So it's a learned, it's a requirement, I think, to be in the legislature to learn that ability to do that. Because sometimes you sit through 45 seconds of something you maybe weren't wanting to sit through, and so I think we've all picked up on that. And to Senator Bryan's point, I think the reason we do task force like this, and we've tried to do this, is we try to find out what other states are doing correct. We try to find out what our state is doing correctly, and we try to, because we don't know. I think most people in this room, including myself, we had no idea, some of the things that are going on in DeSoto County, and that's good because we don't want, everyone to know, particularly in law enforcement, where resources are and, to be able to work around it. But I think the reason we do this is we try to take these ideas and, to your point, try to find a way to move that on. So in our district, it's become so large that I think had we not added the 7A component to football, we would have our own football district within our county, because we were on track to, I think, have 8 6A schools. Now we have 7As that have jumped in there and changed it, but we have large schools. We have, a way to kind of use it, and it does show how,
I'm on speakerphone. Okay, hold on, I'm about to go in there.
can produce a good result. So I think we could, as a committee, we could maybe look at trying to find a way to, you don't have to combine a district to make this happen, but you can find ways to combine areas, to allow that to happen, much like what we've done with mental health and, and everything we do in the state. So I think your points are excellent, Senator Bryan. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, we thank you for the information and thank you for your entire team being here. I think it's been very helpful and is going to give us some ideas to kind of look at, and you too. And if we decide to do something like this, I certainly think what you're doing in DeSoto County is a pilot type of program. We may look at some ways to, reinforce the pilot or to, find some other pilot locations or move beyond that, should that be a suggestion that comes out of this meeting. So again, thank you all for being here, and safe travels going back home. I'll be home soon myself too. So thank you so much.
Thank y'all so much. Appreciate it.
We'll take just one little quick break for just maybe about 5 minutes, and then our next speaker is, I think, scheduled at maybe 9:55, I believe, by virtual. 9:25. Okay, so we'll take maybe 5-10 minutes, just a quick break, and then we'll get back to it here. Okay, so we're gonna just go ahead and start back just a little bit early here. I believe Dr. Hay has to leave early today, and so she wanted to share her 5 minutes. And so my hope would be, since we don't have a huge group, we may actually, after this next meeting, have our sharing time and maybe leave here certainly earlier than what the agenda kind of shows here. But we'll let her present, and then we'll move to our online presentation just shortly after that, if that's okay.
Oh, no. Oh, there I did. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for letting me go early to all of you all. For those of you, well, first of all, I want to thank you, Senator, and your colleagues for this for this committee and for this roundtable. It's been fantastic. And also Senator Boyd for introducing the legislation that made this possible. So I'm Joy Hogue, and I know a lot of you, but I'm with Families as Allies. We're a statewide organization run by and for families of children with behavioral health and related challenges. So we support each other. We work and train people who are working with families in effective ways to partner with them. And then we work on policy issues that we think will support our children. So this has been a wonderful opportunity. We work directly probably with 300 families a year and then reach thousands more through training, social media, outreach in the community and at events. And the biggest issue that families present with are education issues. About 95% of our calls are about education. And it's usually about the special education system. I just thanked you for not issues where families are either able to not access services for their child, or the services that they're getting aren't working. So these are recommendations based on what families say, and then also from what we've learned in these past meetings. One thing I think is really important that may seem like a no-brainer is to keep in mind that the purpose of school is for children to learn. So everything that happens in a school, even if it's not directly related to learning, should still show outcomes that help learning. And that's one thing I really appreciate about the last presentation. All schools in Mississippi, and this is, if you only want to listen to one thing I say, I hope you'll listen to everything I'd say, go with this. All schools in Mississippi are already mandated to implement the multi-tiered system of supports, which is normally the tier system. That's in law. That covers a lot of things, or provides a starting point for many of the things we've talked about: universal screening, classroom intervention, suicide prevention, a whole lot of those things. And we learned yesterday that counselors were telling us that's what we do, that's what we want to do, that's what we are trained to do, and they can't do it. So anything we can do, if it's reissuing that guidance, if it's MDE monitoring, I don't know what it is, but to allow, and I know there's not enough of them, but to allow the ones that are out there to do what they are supposed to be doing, especially the behavior side of tier. That would address so many issues. I think our call volume would go down, and I would love that. And their requirements for licensure, I happen to be a psychologist, their requirements for licensure that seemed pretty stringent and rigorous to me. I don't think we need to worry about, like proscribing things they need to do. I think their licensure and credentials itself should help take care of that. Universal screening is a good idea. Remember, that needs parental permission. And there is an issue if an outside entity comes in and does screening, and they're also someone who provides services, there can be a conflict of interest, whether or not it's even conscious, where they could be motivated to refer students to themselves. So if and also parents may not trust the screening, but if the screening is provided by those counselors, that removes the conflict of interest, and also That's probably someone parents are more likely to trust. We also, I think it would be good to get more data about how schools are actually experiencing the outside mental health supports that are coming in. You know, are they using other supports? Is that why some districts don't use them? Are there things they really like about the supports? What's most helpful? And the issue of risk assessments is huge. I know the state superintendent was talking about there's a group looking at that. I think it would be good to incorporate any of the folks from this group that are interested in that. I know we are. I think you guys are into that process. And then after we look at some of these things, especially making sure that anything that happens in school is really coordinated with learning and embedded into that school environment. And there's some good resources I put in my notes that can help mental health providers understand more about some of those things about TIER. And then there's organizations like ours that can do some training. Looking at after things are more integrated between mental health and education, if there's any ways that MOU that's out there could be updated to make it even more supportive of what needs to happen in schools. And I think that's it.
Very good, and thank you. And I look forward to having everybody's input today. And I know you had to go, so I'm glad we were able to let you share ahead of time. So we will move on to our next presenter, who I hope is ready online, I believe. See him up there. So next we have Michael O'Neill, who's the founder and CEO of the Get Well Network, offering some perspective about their solutions, working with partners like Canopy in Mississippi. So does IT have him connected? Can you hear us, Michael?
I can. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, and what we've been doing, if you would, just give us a brief introduction of yourself. Tell us what you do and what your role is, and then you can move into your presentation. We look forward to hearing from you this morning.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I hope you guys can see me okay. I'm in a ground floor of a Marriott courtyard. I've rearranged the furniture. They probably won't be pleased to kind of get as much light as I can into this room. But hopefully you can see me okay.
Yeah, we can see you fine.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael O'Neill. It's good to be with you all today. I'm the founder and CEO of an organization called Get Well Network. I'll get in to kind of some of what that is as we kind of walk through this morning. I'll be rather brief with my remarks. It's an honor to be here with you all, and the work you all are doing to explore how to take care of our young people better is both applaudable and it's unique. And so thank you for actually having me. If you can advance the slide, I'll give you a little bit of background. I think will be helpful to set the context for us. Just a quick snapshot on my life experience. Healthcare has marked most of my adult life, moving left to right at 28 years old. That's a picture of a tumor on the inside of my stomach. I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and spent a lot of time as a 28-year-old cancer patient going through surgery to remove about half of my stomach and 5 cycles of what they call CHOP chemotherapy to kind of treat my cancer, and kind of saw our health system kind of from the inside out in a very unexpected way. 7 years after my cancer experience, my wife and I lost one of my twin baby girls, Macy, to what they call a diaphragmatic hernia after 19 days in a NICU. I really kind of understood really what anguish, kind of means in our human experience. I then, a couple of years after that, 5 years after that, had a chance to be the primary caregiver for my dad. And when he died at a very young age of Parkinson's disease, moved him up close to Washington, D.C., where I live, had a chance to be with him every day of his life and have my kids kind of surround my dad, in his life. And then finally, and most germane to our conversation this morning, in the last 36 months, this is a photograph of my Notre Dame roommate, Frank Belafonte. So Frank Belafonte, my roommate and my best friend in the world, my brother Scott's business school roommate, Will Carden from Arizona, my brother Sean's high school basketball backcourt mate, Joey McDonough from Charlotte, North Carolina, and one of my board members, Ted Woodings, who has 4 boys aged 14 to 4, have all died by suicide in the last 3 years. I share this with you to say, and also as a father of a 21-year-old girl and an 18-year-old girl, it is a profound both responsibility and opportunity to think about the journeys of our lives through the lens of our health and think differently, you know, about how we may care for people. I was reading The Anxious Generation over the last month, which is a book I'm sure you all have talked about. And so have a handful of thoughts to kind of share with you on how we might think differently about the young people and the precious young people and their families in your state. So if you can advance the slide. The question always is with these experiences, what do we do with them? Here's what I've done with mine. Literally with a bald head and a handful of pounds lighter from my chemotherapy treatments, I was drawing on a napkin in my hospital bed at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, how we might leverage technology not to light up another app, but instead, how might we put patients and people at the center of their care? How might we actually arm them with a set of tools that can connect them directly to the human beings who are skilled to care for them? But also importantly, how might we help empower them to have the information, to have access to tools that actually they can begin to resource, that they can be educated about their own care, and they can begin to take some control of how they navigate, you know, through all the things that kind of life deals with us. And so from that, I built an organization over the last 25 years. And the only thing I'd say that's relevant about that is we have touched a lot of people at Get Well Network across the United States, in Canada, New Zealand, Australia, a little bit in the Middle East and Europe. We have touched over 100 million people with digital tools. We don't touch them by having them light an app up. We actually touch them by actually reaching out to them proactively, meeting them where they are, whether it be on a school iPad, whether it be on a website, whether it be in a text message, and we are connecting them very directly to human beings and people that can help them and give them access to lots of different tools and kind of navigate. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of background so you understand the perspective that I actually come from. You can advance that now. With that, I won't spend much time on this because you guys have been dealing with this on your committee for some time now, but it always helps to kind of soak in a little bit of this data. 3 million of our young people with serious thoughts of suicide in a year, and 1 out of every 3 people reporting persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. And man, oh man, most of our mental illness, 75% of it by the time a person is 24 years old. So it's certainly, again, I so applaud what you all are doing. I've spent time in similar meetings to this in North Carolina, South Carolina, Maryland. The reason I'm out here in California, I was with a family and youth advisory council at Stanford Children's Hospital last night, speaking about this very issue. We have to think differently about this. The way we're currently attacking it is not working. And if you turn to the slide, I'll tell you what we all know is certainly not working is we're not going to give these kids another app and think that it's going to help them navigate, you know, the world that we have handed them, you know, and how we might help them have access to resources that can be helpful. We know that this is not the answer. And so it's really interesting and striking to read in The Anxious Generation, 3 out of the first 4 recommendations. Number 1, no phone before 14. Number 2, no social media before 16. Number 3, no phones in school. If we don't do some things that are different in the way that we're evolving, these statistics a slide ago, of course, won't get better. They will actually get worse. And so if you kind of turn the slide again, I want to just give you a couple thoughts on this. We don't think a new app is the strategy at Get Well, nor in the partnership that we spent the last 24 months forming and working on with our friends at Canopy. However, we do think that Harvard Business School and lots of businesses have gotten it wrong. You see these signs a lot in business schools, and you actually see it in company boardrooms, that hope is not a strategy. And the irony of it is they actually have it wrong. Hope actually is a strategy. It's not only a strategy, it's a science. There's a 30-year-old body of work that we've spent the last 24 months pulling out of psychology academic journals and finding a way to kind of bring it into the hearts, minds, and souls of both young people and the people that care for them, whether it be teachers, whether it be counselors, whether it be families. This 30-year-old body of work is very important, and we think it actually in it is a kernel that may help us in Mississippi first and then beyond think differently about how we might actually help young people navigate through their life journey and through their mental health challenges. So the question, of course, is like, why is this a strategy? Well, first of all, it's a definition that's important. Hope is the belief that your future will be better than today and that you have the power to make it so. It's not about, I hope the weather turns better today, or I hope I do well on my test. Hope is the belief that tomorrow will be better than today and that you have the power to make it so. There are three core tenets of the research on hope, and it's pretty straightforward, but it's really important to sit on. Number one, goals. The ability to set a goal that I have a fundamental role in achieving. Number two, the ability to kind of establish multiple pathways to achieve that goal. And number three, the ability to actually have the agency or the willpower to sustain my energy towards that goal, and also to be able to re-goal and to re-pathway when my goals become impossible to achieve or the pathways I've established get shut off. And this construct around hope is one that we actually believe, not just in a wish, but we believe because the evidence tells us so. There have been 2,000 studies on hope, and it actually has been determined over the last 30 years, it's the number one determinant for a life well lived and of well-being. In the context of everything from navigating your normal life, to childhood trauma, to sexual and physical abuse, to cancer survivorship, those that actually understand are taught and are provided the skills and tools to actually understand hope, to build hope and sustain hope, simply have better outcomes. And I would offer you just a thought as you're thinking through and listening to all of the presentations and the research that you have done. I would offer you a thought that I think, and we are seeing in our data, that we continue to race towards a medical model only to kind of treat hope. And if we allow these kids to get downstream to where they're harming themselves already, we do not have a chance to kind of reverse the trajectory of an entire generation of people. You can turn this forward. So we don't say this simply. We do a lot of research. We've spent a lot of time with the team at Canopy and others in your state. In fact, I've been down to Jackson, I think now 9 times in 14 months. I've eaten more redfish Anna than maybe all of you all combined in the room. And I'm blown away by the passion, by the compassion, and by the willingness to take action in a different way down in Mississippi. This is what we have actually researched. Here's the good news. I've actually heard the last couple of presentations. There is no shortage of people and resources and services that are being aimed at the well-being and mental health of young people in your state and also in ecosystems beyond that. What is challenging, as you know, is that they're all coming at it from their own angle, and oftentimes to the child or to the family, we aren't aware that they're actually struggling until it's too late, or we actually haven't served up these resources in a coordinated way where we actually get the right resource to the right kid or the right family at the right time. And so we've been spending a lot of time really understanding the ecosystem and thinking about how we may put a layer on this. And this is where technology does matter. If we can tech enable the ecosystem of resources and take an inclusive, not an exclusive model, whereby when you actually do see a program working, that gets added to the tech-enabled resource, we can begin to then triage more kids to different things that might work for them. So the model is simple. Understand the resources that are actually in the community. Don't deny them. Pick up on the ones that are actually working, but create a tech-enabled platform to allow us to get the kids upstream, introduce them to actually hope and screen them for that, leverage kind of that screen, and then go triage them to the resources they need, be they physical or digital, and wrap ourselves around them. So if you move the slide forward. So just like you all are doing, I happen to be at the Aspen Institute in a fellowship for health innovators with Dr. Damon from Canopy. I didn't know a whole lot, to be honest with you, about Mississippi prior to this. I grew up in upstate New York. I live in DC. I spent a lot of time all over the world trying to help organizations figure out how to engage patients more effectively in their care. and was invited into Health Innovators Fellowship. And on the same day, this large article advertisement was put, in a national publication. I was with Dr. Damon. It was the same day he was talking about how at Canopy, they're actually thinking about and they're using, first they train their staff to understand how to be hopeful, what hope was, how to leverage goals, pathways, and agency to make sure the staff was kind of lifted in a way that's important to be able to serve the challenging youth and young people and families that they actually serve. And then he actually told me, hey, we're one of the largest nonprofits in the state, and we actually serve about 8,600 kids. And I said, well, John, how many middle school and high school kids are there in the state? He says, there's about 400,000. And I'm like, well, what if we actually could take the incredible work that you and your counterparts across the state are doing? What if we could touch 85,000 kids or 850,000 kids or actually 85 million kids? What if we actually could literally change the vernacular, the trajectory, of this entire thing? What if we took this work that you guys are doing so carefully with children and their families and began to really kind of roll it out? So we actually went to work and said, hey, we had to do this differently. If you can move the slide forward. And so we began to think about what would a model look like? What if we actually didn't wait until a kid showed up in our ED or had missed school 7 out of the last 12 days? What if we actually did embed the science of hope? What if we introduced teachers, administrators, parents, children, legislators? What if actually the dialogue changed? And when the kid was struggling, we actually identified, we actually asked them, hey, let's talk about what your goals are. How might I help you establish multiple pathways to achieve them? Are you surrounding yourself with the right group of friends? Am I part of that kind of group that helps you kind of maintain agency? What if we actually screen them that way? What if we actually understood where they were, kind of in their journey or their hope level was? Because we've seen from 2,000 studies what a determinant it is for their well-being. What if we then actually coupled that with a whole set of resources to make sure we can scale out these school councils who simply don't have the capacity to be able to get to all these kids? What if we did arm them with some tools that actually have been proven to work for anxiety, for sleep, for stress, for depression, or what have you? But we certainly shouldn't do this with technology alone. What if we actually then made sure we also screen the families? Because oftentimes the environment at home is an enormous determinant of how well these kids are actually doing or not doing, in school and beyond. And then what if we actually worked with and didn't think that technology could solve this issue, but instead it could actually lift, empower, and coordinate all the incredible human resources that are available to kids, including their counselors, including their teachers, including mental health professionals throughout the state, like Canopy and their counterparts, across the state. And what if we created a model where now all of a sudden we had data to understand at an individual level, at a school level, at a state level, where are we in this journey, and how can we continue over time to add new resources, to this technology-enabled solution to make sure that we can triage kids to everything from a therapist as quickly as they need it if they're in an urgent situation, or how might we actually put them in a group session that happens to be a soccer coach in a community who actually is teaching kids how to support each other. And so that's the model that we actually have been working on for 24 months. And about a year ago, if you turn the slide, we actually began to put this into a couple of schools right there near you all in Madison County. We were working with their superintendent, and we're really making sure we asked them, hey, we certainly know there's a vast array of socioeconomic status and across different kind of parts of the state of Mississippi. Let's make sure that we're in schools that are diverse, that have kids, across the entire spectrum, both from a race standpoint, from an economic standpoint, or what have you. And I will tell you, one, again, we are bolstered by the engagement, by the resilience of young people. And we're also alarmed, and it's striking to know how many kids are really kind of seeking help, but they kind of don't even know how to get it. And so here are the kind of early statistics that are really striking to us. 77% of the kids that we engaged in this to kind of screen them for hope activated. 84% of those actually completed the survey, giving us great information with a very quick amount of time. Again, not asking them necessarily at first about their mental health, which, as you all know, still can be intimidating and be a stigma, but instead an evidence-based, proven, simple 6-question screener around how hopeful somebody is. Do you have goals? Do you have multiple pathways to get them? And do you have the willpower and the energy to kind of go after them and pursue them? 22% of those kids screened around needing additional support. 13% of those kids actually access new support. And the topics are predictable and they're alarming. Statistics are not lying around what kids are struggling with. And at the same time, we got about 30% of the families activate around giving us information about social needs they actually have. And a really striking number, almost 60% of those who completed the social determinant screening need additional support. And we don't just leave them there. Screeners are one thing, and we can screen, but it was really striking. 56% of the kids that we screened that actually had low hope were not picked up in a normal mental health screener. It's not to deny the importance of screeners, it's actually to say, let's think about being dynamic in kind of what we're screening for so that we can capture more kids, engage more kids, meet them where they are, and kind of go and do that. And so a really important way for us to be thinking about this. I thought at this time kind of to close out, and then we can take questions and discuss. We'd show a short video. I believe it's actually on the next slide of the presentation. Oh, one more thing before we do that. I'm sorry, I forgot this. What's interesting about technology, again, is that we can have the kids put their phones away. We're running this kind of through the school's iPads. It does allow kids to enter what their goals are. It does allow us to understand that from a counselor or kind of family standpoint. It does allow them to be coached to kind of have introduced kind of new pathways into those goals. And what we were seeing are kids' willingness and desire to engage, to share, to work on themselves, and then for us to be able to support them both with digital and physical tools that can really kind of help them along their journey. And so lots of promise, ahead, and excited to share you a little bit of feedback from kind of some of your counselors. Can you forward that one more time? Thank you. Let's see if this is going to run.
My name is Mallory Cooper, and I am an in-school therapist for Canopy Children's Solutions. When Canopy Anywhere was first launched back in March of 2023, the initial Hope Screener was sent out. And one of the particular students that flagged, she was involved in a lot of in-school activities. She had lots of friends, pretty good home life. So she spoke English, but her parents did not. And she did great in all of her classes, excelled in everything. So wouldn't have ever flagged for a behavioral issue or anything like that. And she flagged. And so I sent her information to her school counselor. She met with me, with her parents for an intake. And during that intake, we had to ask, have you ever thought of hurting yourself or thought of suicide? And she said, yes. In that course of that conversation, realizing that she was suicidal, her parents were distraught. They had no idea. And so we set up a treatment plan. We had a safety plan. And in the course of the next 3 to 6 months, I saw her go from suicidal ideations and panic attacks in the middle of the day, running to my office to self-soothe, to she wanted to graduate therapy. She wanted to be done with therapy. And she said, I can do it on my own, Miss Cooper. And so we graduated her from therapy, and now she's about to be going to high school. So it's exciting.
I'll just finish with one more thing just to kind of close, and then we'll come off the screen or come off the slide. You can just advance that one more time. This is a photograph from the last time I saw Frank Belafonte alive, and as we've embarked on this work and kind of turned our success into a significance, lens, I wonder out loud every day, if I had been exposed to this work, if I had met Dr. Damon and the team at Canopy, if we had already been doing this work in Mississippi, if I could have given Frank a prescription for hope, perhaps not, the 4 or 5 medications that he had been on, might we had been able to establish a goal that he could kind of get after? Might we have established multiple pathways for him to kind of go after that goal? And might we continue to surround him with people to kind of lift him up and provide that light and energy to kind of go after those goals and those pathways, even when both of them get shut in your face, which, as we all know in life, many things do get closed off from us. So I offer you a thought, as you work through your work today. There is an opportunity to touch not one, but all 400,000 young people in the state. There's an opportunity to have Mississippi take lead, not only for your own local communities, but for the entire country and perhaps the world. And so I think you had a really interesting time here. It's an honor to be with you and happy to kind of answer any questions, but we can take the screen down and talk from there. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. I think it's your presentation is great. The difficulty sometimes comes with the technology and connecting, seeing that, sometimes virtually. But can you give us any, with the Canopy Anywhere, can you give us any data on outcomes or on anything you're seeing? There was some conversation right when Dr. Hagee was giving her presentation earlier, is that whatever we do, we'd like to tie that to success and success in education and other things. So do you have anything you could share with us on education success out of programs like you're describing?
Yeah, so in the first wave of this has been up for about a year. And so the first wave of this for us on the outcome side has been about engagement rates, flagging those individual kids like you heard about in the video, and making sure we're kind of getting to those interventions very rapidly, kind of as they flag. As an organization, and as the conversations are, there's a set of both education-based and healthcare-based outcomes that we will begin to measure now, kind of with this early work. As the first test was can we actually walk into a set of schools? Can we partner with the administration and the school counselors? Can we get young people and their families to engage? And let's kind of run at engagement. And now with that engagement, things like days missed in school, graduation rates, these education outcomes will follow. They're not there yet in the pilot. And there'll also be a lot of healthcare outcomes that we'll be measuring, everything from number of emergency department visits to instances of kind of self-harm. I think someone mentioned earlier, we want to keep kids out of inpatient beds. So those are the things that actually will be measured on the outcome side.
Who in your model with the app is kind of the principal person or group that gets the awareness to, I guess, the kids to know and to connect to the app? How is that connection made?
Yeah, and this is where the schools can be so important. And so as kids return to these schools we've been piloting in this year as part of their back to school assembly, if you will, like this program where we kind of rolled out as part of a framework, for the school, really kind of leaning in to again, not the mental health, to the well-being, of the people who are kind of coming back to school. So it really is embedded in how it gets introduced that way. And as we get that permission, from the parents, both through the school counselor, and we also can use SMS. There's the learning that we've done through many years is you have to think about this in a multimodal scenario. So in a homeroom, for example, through iPads, we could be actually sending a note to have kids kind of fill out a screener. So there's multiple ways for us to be able to, one, make them aware through the letter that goes home to the families, to the first school assembly, and then in through the kind of their homeroom class, for example. So there's lots of opportunities on the modality standpoint to engage people. And we have found through all the years in our work that it just simply can't be one way to do these things. You have to really make sure you're along the way. I would tell you that just to give you a sense on the pilot, the first part of the pilot was actually an opt-in. And so it required families and parents to actually opt in, and guardians kind of opt in for their kids to participate. The school's moving to an opt-out model. They've seen enough success in the engagement rates and the impact on kids anecdotally, mind you, and your question about outcomes is a great one. We built our whole organization off of outcomes. You can imagine we're dealing with large, complex populations, across the world with large, complex, entities and all. But they're actually moving towards an opt-out model. So meaning that this will be a default, around kind of well-being.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Your pilot, remind me the ages again you're talking about that y'all piloted this with?
Yeah, it's actually 13 to 18. So middle
Okay,
school, high school. Yeah.
13 to 18. Okay. I misunderstood when the individual was speaking on that. Why did you particularly start with that 13-year-old? Like, why particularly that 13 age? Is it because it's like seventh grade and up? Tell me why you particularly looked at that age.
Yeah, I think like first of all, there's everything from both the COPA laws and the evidence. Like what's interesting about the evidence on this is that there's some really powerful among those 2,000 studies. There's some real power, in even kind of younger kids doing this. We're hitting this, from an adolescent standpoint, really kind of coming off of the latest data and making sure that we actually can grab an age cohort, that we believe, we can go engage, with this and can really kind of begin to move into this and begin to feel a level of their own self-control, in their process around their journey. So it's a combination of the regulations that we're actually dealing with as well as the evidence. And that combination had us, really kind of start with that. In my organization, we work probably in 50 out of the top 60 children's hospitals across the country. And so we have lots of experience with patient and family advisory councils and how we're actually using some digital things to kind of augment, their care teams and how to kind of get folks to engage. And so this age group is one that we all felt very comfortable with, along with the folks at Canopy.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Well, thank you again for joining us today. Your insight is very helpful as we kind of tackle, as you know, a very complex challenge and problem in our state. And I know who's the Canopy guy on that? Yeah, Dr. Damon is recovering, I think, from knee surgery. So he wasn't able to join us today. So you filling in for him and providing this information was extremely valuable, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on all the work you all are doing. Really, really appreciate it every time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Okay, so we're going to move into kind of our presentation time here. And, one thing that just, kind of coming out of the things we've heard this morning, that if you choose to use your 5 minutes, one thing I'd like you to add to your thought on this is that if, just based on what you've heard so far in the testimony, if you had a small bucket of money, and I'll just make up a number that is $10 million, so to do something in the state, what would that be? Would it be a technology solution? Would it be, a boots on the ground solution? What would it be? So in your 5-minute presentation, if you don't have a presentation, you can maybe just answer that question. But we'll kind of go through this and just let it be. We'll talk a little bit and discuss because I do think, kind of going forward, we may have just maybe 1 or 2 other groups we want to hear from, but we want to start putting this data down to a point where we're actually making some recommendations based upon what you've heard, what you think could help move our state forward. And I think just as we do our 5-minute discussion, it's a good exercise to kind of get that started. So we'll flip a coin. And because we have more people on this side of the room, we're going to start on this side of the room. Yeah, so let's just roll into this and just, we can make it interactive. You can speak for 5 minutes, or, if someone has a question or a comment along that time, just go ahead and feel free to chime in. So.
I won't take 5 minutes. I just have a couple of things that I've written down that I've thought about while we were going through all these presentations. One thing that I want to make sure that, we as a task force make sure to realize that there is, we need to watch for duplication of services. There are a lot of services that are being offered. And as I have learned, I think that a lot of
schools don't realize the services that are available to them. And, you know, as an executive director, I know that I work with the school, the central office. That's who I send my MOU to. That's who I talk to. But I don't know that all of the teachers really understand what they have at, you know, at their disposal free of charge, because the community mental health centers are tasked with providing an entire continuum of care to students, whether they have insurance or not. And we also don't send people to collections when they can't pay anything either. I mean, we provide this truly free of charge, which is, you know, where a collective, you know, write-off is close to $30 million a year for the CMHCs. I loved the law that Florida has about requiring the schools to work with the community mental health centers or the community health organizations, because I do think that we underutilize the school counselors. I think that the school counselors could really make a huge impact by helping to do universal screenings. They have the education and the understanding to do those universal screenings and understand where they need to refer those kids out to. And if we make sure that they understand the services, then they have an easier job referring those children out. So universal screenings, I think, is something that we need to really look at. There are a lot of universal screenings in the public domain, so there would be no need for a cost for that. They're validated, and they are age specific. And of course, there are some screeners and assessments that do cost, but some of those are very, very small costs. I want to make sure that we remember that not only do, you know, are there all these services, but the CMHCs truly do have a full continuum of care. And when we're not capable of knowing what's going on with that student, when we're the ones that are called at 2 a.m. to show up to that student's home because they are suicidal and they've woke the parents up and law enforcement is out there, we walk in and we don't know, because maybe we haven't been involved in that child's treatment. When it is a student of ours that we have been treating for a couple of years, then our mobile crisis therapists are able to walk in and know what's going on. They know that the family is going through a divorce. They know that the family is struggling with poverty or homelessness, or, you know, they know that grandma died 2 weeks ago and this kid is really struggling with complicated grief. And so I think it goes back to just ensuring that the community mental health centers are used and we're used for the reasons that we're there. And let me see what else I got. I also don't think that we know that also the community mental health centers are tasked with ensuring that we offer substance abuse prevention services. And I know somebody talked about DARE yesterday. The prevention services that community mental health centers must provide are evidence-based. They all are, you know, and not only are they evidence-based, but they also match the curriculum requirements for education. So if allowed, we come in and do that for free. And we provide the workbooks, we provide all of those things for these children to learn. And we can start in kindergarten. There's curriculums out there that start from kindergarten and go all the way up through high school. So I would, you know, encourage that the task force remind the schools that those are available. And just all you have to do is ask and we'll be there.
So Melody, if you would, as we go around, I had a request come in, just kind of like what we're doing, the speakers, just as we're talking, let's introduce ourselves to just the group who is watching or who may go back and watch this again online, and that'll help. So if you would just introduce yourself, even though you've already shared with us, and then
Absolutely.
at the end, again, try to give us an idea of where you would put some of the money. But I think Senator Boyd has a question right after your introduction.
Okay, so my name is Melody Medeiros. I'm the Executive Director of Communicare. We are the Community Mental Health Center in Region 2, so we cover 6 pretty rural counties in north central Mississippi.
sorry. So one of the things that some community mental health centers do very well and others need some improvement is on those crisis intervention teams with helping directly our CPS services. So how do we help make sure those community mental health centers actually are equipped to do those crisis interventions when there is a situation with a child with CPS?
I mean, it comes back to, money, and workforce development. So for Region 2, we just happen to have a really passionate group of individuals. And I'm so blessed that we have those people working for us. We go out no matter what. I think that some of the other CMHCs either have a problem with the collaboration piece where people don't want them coming in or they don't know about the ability to collaborate with them. And then I think that especially some of the really rural areas in Mississippi, they have a hard time with that workforce development to have enough people to respond because burnout is a real thing. And when you are on call all the time, you get tired. So when you have one or two therapists that are always the ones that are going out, you lose those therapists.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And this is going to sound crazy. For $10 million, I'm not even going to say anything about mental health. I think that what we need to do is help our kids and our families with poverty, homelessness, food insecurities, those social determinants of health, because I think that's where we're losing people. Kids can come to therapy every single day of the week. And as a therapist, I can teach them how to cope with life. I can teach them how to cope with bullies. But what I can't do is ensure that they have a meal tonight and that they know where their head is going to lay tonight. And no matter, it's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we don't have that bottom tier firm, there's no amount of therapy I can provide that's actually going to help that kid continue to succeed.
Very good. We'll move on to Heather, if you would introduce and share your thoughts.
My name is Heather Garrett. I've been a public school teacher in the classroom for 19 years. I started teaching in 1996. I did take a little time off to raise children at home, but I've taught in Madison County and Rankin County, and I have four daughters. Two have graduated college and one's an educator also, and the other one's a nurse. So I'm hitting both sides there. The other two are still in college now. Quick takeaways. I'm real quick. Cell phones. I agree, and that's been said several times, cell phones should not be in the school. They should not be in the classroom. We fight that issue every day, and one of the issues we fight with that is parents want to be able to access their kids. And I tell my kids, and I tell my parents, I will never deny access to you, but don't just do it in the classroom. If your kid needs you, we'll get you to the office or wherever. But it's going to have to come probably from the state legislature. I started looking last night and I realized that Florida and I forgot the other state, but they both, Indiana, both banned cell phones in the classroom. And how they did it is their legislators came in and said, schools have to have a policy that they're not allowed. And so our policy at our school is the phones have to be off and in their backpack. And in my classroom, their backpacks are nowhere near their desk because they will do everything they can to sneak, to look. It's just to see that screen. Well, I need to check the time. There's a digital clock and an analog clock in my room. You don't need to check the time. So, and I've had the luxury one year of helping the transportation department drive a bus. I had a kid miss their bus stop because they were on their phone. The kids are addicted to phones. Example yesterday, I didn't even know this was going to come up 2 days ago. We walked in, the kids finally got their laptops. No laptops were supposed to be out in my room. Kid walks in, opens up. I said, why do you have your laptop out? I just need to check in. No, you didn't need to check in. Your parents know you're at school. There's no reason for you to check in. So they are addicted more than just their cell phones. They are addicted to the laptops as well. So I don't know how to manage all of that, but that's my cell phone issue. I think universal screening is incredibly important for all of our students. Through the course of the year, I realized, by October, November, that this student might need to see somebody or might need to talk to somebody. And I think universal screening would help. And I think repetitive universal screening, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or weekly is what we just heard of, because the students are not going to always just answer the right question the right way, and it's going to show up eventually. Counselors, we're blessed with 3 counselors at our school, and our counselors, and go back to the Navigate, which came from the very first time. Our counselors follow the kids 6th, 7th, and 8th, and at the high school, the same counselor follows the kid 9th through 12th. Our counselors do have about 300, they're right at the national average. I think we could use another one to bring their numbers down to 250, but at least I know that at our school, our counselors are going to see those kids at least one time in those 3 years, even if they are not on the radar for somebody. So I do think we need to lower the counsel ratio, and I do think possibly following something like that Navigate program where they stay with them for several years. The 988 National Suicide Hotline on the high school IDs, and I think take it as well down to the middle school IDs. We did IDs last year at our school. I think having that on the back is vital and important. I have students that have never heard it. My children, like I say, I have one all the way to 25 years old. They've never heard of a national hotline whatsoever. So I do think that that's important to put it on school IDs. The other thing I have is mental health first aid. I'd never heard of that. And I'm piggybacking off of what she has said, and this is really my last 2 things. There's so much information. I've been in the education for 20 years. I have a degree in psychology, and I have children that have gone through all realms of speaking with someone, needing, just to have a check-in, all different things. I did not know all this stuff was out here for mental health. And the number of parents that may not want to go through the school counselor, they don't know where to go. They don't know where to access. You said that the very first day we were in here, parents asked me, and I'm like, let me call somebody. We don't know where to go. We don't know all the information that's out there. I think the mental health first aid should be required in schools, and that's a grant. Why can't schools use it? Why don't we use it for teachers and educators and even cafeteria workers, bus drivers, custodians, all of them be involved in that, because we have the first access to the students, not the counselors. They're in my room before they're ever in a counselor's office. So I think that's incredibly important that the schools know some of these resources. And the one last thing we did, we checked several websites in the district, in the area, larger schools. A lot of times the mental health button that's on the school district's website is kind of buried. Not necessarily buried on purpose. Like one school district, you have to go to the student thing and click on it. And another school district, it's under quick links. There needs to be a mental health button on all school websites, because students access it, parents access it, other people also access it. It shouldn't be something that has to be you go look for it. That's all.
Very good. We'll move to Sarah.
Thank you, Senator Parker. My name is Sarah Jones. I'm Director of Counseling at Jones College. And you asked us what we would do if we had $10 million that we could use. I said, increase the workforce of mental health professionals, invest in training staff and students, and also increase resources such as food banks for food insecurities and for safety of our students.
Sorry, I was trying to make sure I got this. All right. Hello, everyone. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is John Robert Walker, and I'm a recent graduate of Starkville High School. This is my last meeting in person, so I might talk a little over 5 minutes, but I want to try to get all my ideas out there. Okay, so first off, I just want to thank you guys for convening this task force. I think it's super important, and especially Representative Scoggin for ensuring that a young person has a seat on this task force. I'm really honored to fill that spot, and I think it's crucial to include young people in conversations about youth mental health and all issues that involve youth. Okay, that said, I'm just one person, one student, offering one perspective, trying to represent hundreds of thousands of students across Mississippi. So to better understand the needs and experiences of my peers, I reached out to other members of the Mississippi State Superintendent Student Advisory Council with the help of Ms. Clemens, and got their feedbacks, their thoughts, their perspectives. Okay, while only a handful of students responded to that survey, their insights reinforced some of my own experiences and also opened my mind to new perspectives. So drawing on my 13 years in Mississippi Public Schools, the feedback from my peers on the council, and the insights from the experts we've heard in recent meetings, I want to highlight some of the barriers to accessing mental health services in schools. These include stigma, concerns about confidentiality, limited knowledge of available resources, and in some cases, limited resources themselves. Though through this task force, I've found that the lack of awareness about existing resources is often a bigger issue because there are resources available. We're just not familiar with them. We're just not aware. Okay, so for the sake of time, I'll focus on the solutions that I believe are most relevant from a student's perspective. This list is not comprehensive by any means, but I hope it highlights some key areas where we can make a difference. So first, and I think maybe most important, I really like the stream analogy yesterday. I think consistent intervention is super important. Consistent mental health support from kindergarten through post-secondary education. So a continuous and comprehensive approach is necessary for these positive mental health outcomes, and it requires complete buy-in from everyone involved. I think the DeSoto County School District and Police Department provided a great example of that. When there is buy-in from the community, it wasn't just one program that is the reason they're successful with mental health. They have buy-in across the board, and I think that is so important. It needs to be in curriculum. It needs to be with teachers trained, counselors, the police department. Everyone needs to be bought into this to make sure that we have good mental health outcomes. Yeah, so actually I already talked about that, but adding mental health curriculum in elementary schools early on, making sure that we're learning these skills early, and then continuing to reinforce them throughout, into high school, maybe the health class, so that it's, we're constantly reminded, we're constantly adapting with, the times. Okay, next, respect for mental health. I really liked Dr. Damon's point about parity between mental and physical health. A lot of students mentioned the stigma around it. I think we should treat mental health with the same respect as physical health, and a few ways that we can sort of go about addressing that, it's besides for just saying it, is maybe including policies like excused mental health days, similar to those already in place for physical health at schools. And Mississippi School for Math and Science already has a policy like this, and it's not something where you can abuse, like you can't just do it to get out of a test. There's specific restrictions around it, but having a day off every once in a while can really go a long way for students who are burnt out or for students who just want a break. Next, mental health training for educators. So I think Ms. Heather made a great point that teachers are the first people who access us, and they're the first people who can really pick up on these signs. So it's really essential to encourage and possibly require these school teachers, staff, and administrators to take advantage of these free mental health first aid trainings available across the state. They're often the first to notice when students are struggling. Okay, next, reevaluating a bill from last session, House Bill 928. And I think also rethinking it. House Bill 928 attempted to implement a statewide uniform mental health screenings for K through 12 students. So early identification and intervention, super crucial. I think the Canopy Everywhere, or I'm not sure what it was called exactly, but really outlined how important it is to screen everyone, because I would say personally, even I would probably be a student that might slip through the cracks, even though I've struggled with mental health. I'm doing good in school. I'm behaving well. I really wouldn't probably be considered at risk, but I've struggled with mental health. So I think, to me personally and anecdotally, I think that's something that should be considered, and just thinking about how we can implement it, because obviously it really is a complicated thing with parental permission and all that stuff. Next, just considering a few innovative approaches that are being piloted around the state, exploring the potential impact of these initiatives. So first, the modified school year calendar. In my school district, we implemented this a few years back, and there's been positive anecdotal evidence. And then also, I was thinking about, y'all asked the DeSoto County schools if they were able to meet with students in the summer, and they were, because they're resourced. But I just think about rural schools or schools who might not be as resourced. This can provide them with opportunity to see students more frequently, close that gap in the summer. And also, like I said, personally, I just always am looking forward to a break. There's always a break almost every single 9 weeks. So there's always something to look forward to, gets you recharged and you're back at it. Next, cell phone restriction. I can be the first one to admit that cell phones are addictive. I spend probably 7 hours a day on my phone. At school, I'm constantly checking it. But I also want to mention that there's a policy that exists in my high school that restricts cell phones, or is supposed to, that bans pretty much cell phones. You're not supposed to access them, but it's not enforced. So again, I just don't know what exactly the approach is. Ms. Heather talked about how, like, at her school or with her classroom, she require students to put it in the backpack and put the backpack away. And I've had a few classes that do that or make us put it in a pouch or something. And I will admit again that I'm more attentive in those classes. I'm more likely to interact with my peers in those classes. I'm more likely to succeed in those classes. Like I think it is crucial to look at how we can implement something like that and actually enforce something like that. Next, assemblies. So again, I really appreciated, I'm not sure what his name was, but his point about, you know, equipping students with the knowledge they need about mental health to not only recognize in their peers, but themselves and get the resources that they need. And my school actually had one last year, but I think it was because of an event, like a tragic event in our community. But students, I mean, I heard from my peers that, you know, they were acting like typical high schoolers and they were saying, oh, like this is silly. This is not really effective, but I think it impacts people even if they're not saying it. I think that people hear these things, and even if it seems silly in the moment, when they need help, they're gonna call back on these moments and think, okay, this is where I go to get help. Finally, youth involvement. Again, I'll talk about how important I think it is to be included in conversations here, but also looking into things like a council for mental health. Like I know the Mississippi Department of Education has a student advisory council, and each year we kind of address different issues related to education in the state. And I think they've had a lot of success with getting feedback from students and, you know, thinking about how they can implement that feedback into their policies. Okay, so finally taking my student hat off and just like as a Mississippian, there are two things I want to mention. Obviously, we need to address the behavioral workforce shortage and then also expand insurance access in Mississippi. You know, every day I'm hearing about a hospital shutting down and how it's impacting community mental health centers. So expanding things like Medicaid, so important. And then also addressing behavioral workforce shortage. Any sort of solutions that we come up with today are not going to be, you know, implemented effectively if we don't have the resources to implement them. So again, these are just a few ideas, but I believe they're a step in the right direction. And I really want to thank you guys for your time and your commitment to improving the mental health of Mississippi students.
So I'll share, I think this is probably John Walker's last meeting with us because unlike everybody else in this room, I don't think he's receiving a paycheck of any sort by being here today. So I want to thank him for being here. And I think you did a really good job of going through at least some of the takeaways that I've had so far and bringing attention back to those. Because we won't have you here, you mentioned you spend 7 hours a day on your cell phone, and we've given a lot of discussion to how and what we should do with cell phone policy. What do you think we should do? Just what, you know, of all the discussion things we've heard, you know, as a student who spending 7 hours a day on their phone probably doesn't want theirs, you know, taken away from them, you know, per se. What do you think a good idea would be from your perspective as a student?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question to answer because I don't want to be pinned as like the student who got our cell phones. but I just will say from my own perspective, and I think one, again, maybe explaining from an early age why it's important, or why it's important to take away the cell phones, because once we get to middle school and high school and everyone has phones, we're so attached to them by that point that it's like it's like they're prying them out of our hands. So, you know, I heard someone say something like seat belts, that wasn't a thing at one point and people are mad about that. It's kind of like one of those things that just needs to be phased in. But really just showing how important, again, it's hard to know in the time, like as a teenager, it feels like our world is ending when we get our phone taken away, but it's not. So I guess just really explaining to them that. And then also like Miss Heather made a great point, putting the phones in a bag and putting them away. So there's not even you don't even think about it. I mean, I'm serious. In the classes that my teachers did that, I was so much more attentive. I really did interact with my peers more. I learned more. I think that you just forget about it almost. So if there was that throughout school, it would just eventually become the normal.
So I had a interesting comment to me from someone over the weekend that said that in their state, you know, they implemented a policy of putting them away for a little bit of time, and that the thing they ran into, interestingly, was that the parents were providing their kids with a second phone. And so they had them with one phone that they would put away, but then the child would have a second phone on their person so that the parent could continue to have access to them. And so as we think about this discussion, I just want us all to know that we're not the only people who think about this and think about ways to go around it. But as a student, would it surprise you in a school if something like that happened?
Not at all. Not at all. Also, I mean, Apple Watches, you know, you can contact people through that or be on things through that. Like she mentioned, I think statewide now, everyone has a device, at least in my school, and people, if they're not on their phones, they're playing a game on that, or they're on YouTube, or there's so many different, and the school does a good job of finding out what people are on all the time and blocking it, but there's just so many ways to be distracted online. So it's a really complicated issue. I'll just say that I think it's a good step to start thinking about how we can.
And you did say too, that you did feel more attentive when you did not have your phone alerting you and bringing information to you on a constant basis.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this might just be a me thing, but if my phone is next to me, sometimes I'll literally think that I heard a notification, but I didn't. Like, that is how ingrained, like how conditioned our brains are to want to pick up the phone and look at it. I set personal time limits on my phone and I click right through it every day. It's scary how addictive it is. I mean, again, I don't even know what the step is in the right direction, and I don't want to be the one again to ban cell phones, but it's scary. It's scary.
Right.
And my parents, I didn't have a phone until I was 13, 14 years old, and I'm so grateful for that. I didn't have access to a ton of screen time, and I think it's helped me a lot socially, just in general. I think it's helped me a lot, but that's got to be a buy-in from community-wide, you know?
Right.
So.
Again, I think your insight has been great, and if Representative
Senator Parker?
Alone, you know, I was going to acknowledge you, but I know you want to jump in here too and say how proud you are of his service. So if you would just share with us, I know you've been listening intently to your to someone probably in your community who's already going to exceed you in expertise and knowledge in the not too distant future. Would you agree with me?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to say thank you to John for what he's done. Literally speaking, he emailed me about 5 minutes before we went into a committee meeting and said, hey, you're talking about this committee and everything you've got going on this committee. Don't you think it would be wise to have a student, to have student input on this committee? And I'm like, duh, yeah, you know, that's probably a great idea. And so I would like to thank him for being observant, paying attention. There's not many students out there paying attention to what the legislature's doing, much less asking to have input. And so I wanted to thank him for his expertise and his insight.
Absolutely. And thank you again for recommending him. He's been a very valuable member of this discussion. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yes. I think we've got Linda hiding kind of
Down here.
in between here. So and introduce yourself and share your words of wisdom.
Sure. I'm Linda Stewart. I'm the Division Director of the Children of the Division of Children and Youth at the Department of Mental Health. I have been at the Department of Mental Health for about 23 years. I've been in this role for about 5. So I started in this role right around COVID. And I want to second everything that every single person has said here. I agree with every bit of that. The community mental health centers are invaluable to the schools. They, all right, thank you. You still can't, and gosh, I'm short, but I can't. They, like Ms. Cole said yesterday, they have about 315 school-based therapists from the community mental health centers in the schools. In addition to that, we have a 200 extra school-based therapists from our private providers. So we're looking at, 500, 520 or so school-based therapists. And with those 90 vacancies, that would put us at 600 if we could get those positions filled. Again, that shortage is just really impacting everything, that mental health worker shortage. I can't say enough about this young man either over here. We do need the youth perspective desperately in everything that we do regarding mental health, and that involves youth. There were several things that were mentioned throughout the presentations that I just kind of wanted to follow up on. The School Safety Act of 2019 was a great piece of legislation. it involved so many different things that I think have helped our services to our students in our schools. There's some things that I think the Department of Education and the Department of Mental Health could go back in there and tweak a little bit. There is a screener that was required through that. It is not a universal screener. So I think we could go back in and work on that to make that a little bit more applicable to the time limits that schools have and to make it effective for all students. I do agree that I think they need to be given more than once a year to the students. Another thing in there, of course, was youth mental health first aid. I'm a big proponent of that. If you've never sat in one of those classes, it is very enlightening, gives you a lot of information. A person that walks out of that class can definitely spot those kids who might need mental health assistance. So I believe that in that for our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, anybody that touches that child's life during the day. Another thing that was brought up that's been mentioned several times that we haven't had an opportunity to talk about is the social emotional learning curriculum. The Department of Health and the Department of Education partnered on that. If I remember correctly, and this was right when I came into my role, there was no funding attached to that legislation. I may be not misspeaking there, but I don't remember if there was or not. I do know that the Department of Mental Health invested in 2 curriculums and training for 10 school districts and 22 schools within those 10 school districts. We were only required to choose 6, but 10 applied and we served all 10 that way. I will say we do have data from that, and that data I've just released again to Ms. Bailey, who has released it to someone else that's probably affiliated with this task force. But I will say that the data collected, it showed great results. But it was collected during COVID, so the curriculum was given to some students virtually because they were going to school virtually, and some in person. So there could be a possibility that some of the data, may not be completely valid, but the results we got and the feedback we got, the verbal feedback we got was all positive. I'm a prevention person, so I believe in prevention, and I agree with, I think the curriculums need to start in kindergarten. I think mental wellness curriculums need to start in kindergarten and go all the way up through their senior year. Let's see. The other thing this sweet young man mentioned is about youth councils. And this is something that I know is not well advertised in the state of Mississippi, but we do have a youth council, and it's called Open Up Mississippi. I don't know if y'all have heard about it, but it's funded through grants that the Department of Health gives to NAMI. And it's about 75 to 100 students across the state are involved in this council, and their task is to promote mental health awareness and reduce stigma. They do that through presentations. They do that through trainings and presentations with their peers, and going to health fairs and having booths there and things like that. Another thing that we've done with those youth, because I know peers have been mentioned throughout some of the presentations and how that might be effective, utilizing their peers. We have trained them to respond to 988 crisis calls for youth and young adults that call in, so that youth or young adult is talking to a peer and not somebody that can't relate. So I did want you to know that we do have a youth council, but I don't think we're advertising it well enough. I think we need to get more information out there about that. I will tell you this too, that funding that we have had for that is ending at the end of this month. So I'm searching desperately to find more funding to continue that. And if y'all want to hear more about that, we can have Ingrid Cloy from NAMI come and present on it. It is some tremendous data. So anyway, and that's all I have.
Senator Boyd has a question.
Yeah, how much?
And at the very end, the microphone didn't pick you up. So if you would reintroduce yourself just kind of for the record,
Yeah.
and
Sorry
because the
about that.
microphones, as always, have been somewhat of an issue.
Sorry about that. Linda Stewart, I'm the Director of the Division of Children and Youth Services at the Department of Mental Health.
y'all do a tremendous job. How much would it cost to extend that youth group that you're talking about? Okay. Could you also too, because y'all have so many services that people don't know about, would you also submit that to peer as well so that that could be additional information? So y'all are doing a tremendous amount of things that I don't think people know about.
I agree with that. And I didn't really realize it until, I became a part of this task force. But the community mental health centers are doing an amazing job, and they have an array of services from very, not very intensive to the most intensive. And they do a phenomenal job doing those services, but I don't think people are aware of what they're doing. We do have a resource guide on our website, again, buried, and on our DMH website, there's a children and youth services director that we've had for, 30 years, that is continually updated, but people don't know how to go get that. So I think, with Heather, what Heather said about making that more accessible so that people know, and then maybe even each community mental health center putting out a resource guide of what they have available too. I think both of those would be helpful.
Kate is up next. If you would, just go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and just give us your takeaways and insight during your 5 minutes too. Thank you.
I'm Kate McMillan. I am the Director of the Office of Mental Health at the Division of Medicaid. I have been there for about a year now. So I am certainly still learning, but this has been tremendously helpful. I think that one thing that has become quite evident through the testimonies through this hearing is that there is no shortage of work being done to try to address the mental health problems for Mississippians, especially our students. I think that what else has become quite evident is that there's not a lot of education about what resources are available or coordination of those resources. I think that one thing that we have learned, that I have learned, is that there are avenues in place already to connect with students, primarily school counselors, primarily the mental health centers coming into the schools. But I think that there is an issue with being allowed to do what you're there to do. That's what I'm hearing, because I think that to have somebody in a school, and I really applaud Sheriff Tuggle and what he's doing. I think in DeSoto County Schools, I think that that is a tremendous undertaking, and I think that they're doing it very well. And they're showing how they are able to collect data to show their results. And I think that if we have somebody in a school who's designated to help coordinate those efforts, I think that DeSoto County's doing that through their Office of Mental Health within the school district. That shows dedication to addressing the problem. And I think that that office understands the resources that are available to them because they are utilizing them. And so to have somebody within a school or a school district who oversees that process, understands what's available through the community mental health centers, through the sheriff's department, through whoever it is, they're able to gather the forces and to support those children and those families. And to what John Walker said, involving the students, involving the families, letting them help drive that conversation about what it is that they need through, whether it's resources for just the home life, because all of that feeds into their mental health. And I don't think we can just look at mental health in a silo. We have to look at it on a broader scale. And what does that look like for these children? because I think there are resources there. I do think that they're probably underutilized resources that would help bolster the coordination of the efforts. I know through the Division of Medicaid, there are a significant number of services that we reimburse for that may be underutilized. The ones that we're talking about that are more about prevention efforts. I think that we need to just have a way to allow schools to educate their children, their families on what's available and help them coordinate that, because our families and our children, they don't know how to access it. And certainly if they're in a crisis, they're not going to know. They're not gonna be able to spend the time to research that. We need to know what's available and bring that to them.
Before I forget this comment, then I'll go to Senator Boyd. My daughter, who's an attorney now, she was the student body president at Delta State, and then again at Mississippi College when she was there. And she was very involved in mental health. And I remember when she was at Delta State, one thing they ended up doing was in her senior year, they actually gave her a seat, I believe at the Bolivar County Supervisor Association or something to that degree, where she was a student representative there, and her task was to just share mental health awareness, with that group. And she sat in there as a participating member. So your comments make me think that another way to kind of tie in the students might be that, through a youth council, maybe we found a way to encourage, our boards of education to have, student at some meetings or, we could do it at the community college level too, where they are actively involved in just supplying some input into what they think is going on the campus, because I do think that, that tie-in could be, certainly used, but great comment, Senator Boyd.
Not to put you in the spot, so, but workforce issues in regards to mental health is something that everybody around the country is grappling with right now. And I know Dr. Edney and I have talked extensively about healthcare workforce. One of the things that I see around the country is through their divisions of Medicaid, they are looking at different certificate options, different people to work in the mental health arena. Texas, for instance, has done a great deal in this particular arena. Getting those navigators, just kind of what you were talking about just there, with community health workers that they have done. There's been peer-to-peer specialists. Dr. Edney, you can probably speak much more extensively on this than I can. Have y'all looked at anything like that in looking at the ability to expand our workforce? These are all things that have been approved by CMS. And they are reimbursable because they all do require certificates, as all things do under CMS. Have you all looked at anything of that nature to help us expand that workforce?
Not specifically. I think that the conversation around, I know that the Department of Mental Health certifies certain staff within the mental health centers. And so if it's beyond that, that's certainly something that we're willing to look at, and maybe a conversation about, what the other states are doing, looking at that and seeing what, we're certainly open to the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I think we'll jump over to Heidi next and let you again do the introductions and then share us your insight. We'll finish up with Dr. Edney.
Certainly. Thank you, Senator Parker, and to all of our leadership here, especially thank you to our youth. As your voice and input is most important. I do concur that Mississippi is not at the onset of improving mental health. So much great work is already being done as represented by our speakers and as by our task force members. I recognize that the collegiate population of students is only 15 to 20% of the students that we comparatively to the students that we serve in K through 12. So the first thing that I would say is, if you are funding, don't forget about us, please. These students are among the best and the brightest that we are sending out into our nation to well represent our great state of Mississippi, and their mental health certainly has come under great duress over the last 2 to 3 years. If I would say one thing before I elaborate on what I think we need, mandates have done great things. For instance, in mental health around areas such as the MAP teams, which I have been involved with before, such as the CMHC collaboration with schools, or the 988 on the ID cards in higher ed. However, mandates without money are certainly a big challenge. And so I would implore that mandates are not issued without the funding to back them up. I cannot say that, although I love the idea of mandated screeners, certainly we are promoting values of autonomy by the time that students get to us. And so for us, it would not be about mandating screeners, although that is a wonderful idea. Particularly, I would stand by that for K to 12, looking at ways that we can increase accessibility, interest, and attractiveness around any type of screeners that would be made available to college students. If we had $10 million, or any number, I think that prevention, evidence-based prevention, not all of our universities have a prevention arm. Our prevention arm only came under the time that I've been there, and we started it with CARES funds. And so looking at how do we continue to fund it has been an exciting journey every year. So, and that is to say that I know our Division of Student Affairs stands behind continuing to improve mental health and mental health care and services, yet it's still hard. Professional development and support for the workers, I would not necessarily say put the money into technology. Boots on the ground are so important. When we read into the national literature of trends, we see that technology companies are coming in and replacing entire university counseling centers. And I think that that is a loss to the culture and the understanding that the workers in the centers are able to give. Now, that's not happening a lot, but it certainly has begun. Also, I think that monies into after hours and crisis care, and then lastly, into peer support would be important. There have been some things that have been mentioned about coursework for collegiate students. I want to tell everyone, if they were more interested in that, there is a researcher by the name of Chungani. For instance, Maryland is offering a 1-credit course in emotional health. One of the things that I think is going to be important about remembering the boots on the ground is that a living wage is going to be important. We look at the pursuit of the mental health centers, the CMHCs, and becoming certified under the new certificates that could become available. And in doing so, they are raising their pay in a way that we are less competitive now because they provide the most of the jobs in the area. In saying that, we have to consider that when I first came, we had to, after trying to hire post-COVID, we had to rewrite who we would hire to begin to hire people that were pre-licensed to work with one of the highest risk groups in the spectrum of care. Another thing that I think is important is a greater understanding for universities and university directors about the availability of resources for collaborative partnerships. These things are effective and already paid for. Right now, we are collaborating with DMH using mental health first aid funds that come from federal dollars and Shatter the Silence, as well as Mississippi State University for the Alliance Under Suicide Prevention. And so I think that part of the reason why some of that is happening is because I'm a CMHC girl, right? And so I think that it would be important for others at a higher level and across our public universities to know more about these already paid for opportunities to improve student mental health. Again, I thank the task force for our collaborative work and everyone that is leading us.
So how do you bring up some good points here? And, so I appreciate your input, Sarah's as the, I guess, the representatives of, our CJCs and IHL level, at least today. And, your point about the class, and it goes back to our involving the youth kind of concept. As we look at IHL and CJCs in particular, if we did have a mental health class, how do you think we could make that class be a preferred class for students to take? Could we offer it at maybe as a no-cost class? Could we have it be a class that gives some type of extra credit, versus, and I just kind of think, well, maybe it's a 1 credit class, but you get 1 credit hour class, but you get more credits than that. I mean, how at the school level, if you thought that was an important thing to do, could, because offering the class, if nobody takes it, really doesn't matter. It gets back to your mandate point. You have a mandate, but, you don't put any money with it. What's the point? So how do you think, just, for both of you, that if we were going to do something, we could achieve that?
I value the interest in a course. I did want everyone to be aware that if the legislature would venture towards that there are examples. I think that, again, it's going to be an issue of how do we get the students in there? And in wisdom, I would say you would need to speak with curriculum specialists and take that question to provosts and do a feasibility study and look at the successes at the other university. It does exist. However, I think that there is a lot of bang for our buck under prevention. If prevention employees and departments and leadership and programming were funding, it could achieve a lot of the same things in a more dynamic way that happen in and outside of the classroom.
Sarah, you want to add anything? And then John Walker too.
At JC, all of our freshmen, incoming freshmen are required to take something called a college life class. And that college life class, it involves mental health, financial, it involves everything that those students are going to need for their initial semester in college. The initial semester in college. So it covers the mental health aspect of it.
Okay. So are we already doing that at the IHL level too?
Most people have their UNV 100 series. I think when we talk about these specific classes, these are devoted curriculums that go into depth and focus only on mental health. And I think that they would run a distinction from those that exist. But again, I think that a lot of the same work could be done in a much more dynamic fashion under funded prevention.
So maybe you could expand perhaps kind of the subject content in that class, and make that happen. That'd be a good thing for us to maybe hear back from, and if you want to reach out to some of your, college presidents and just, get a flavor of what that might be. Because I don't want us to come out of this task force with recommendations that are entirely centered towards the youngest children out there. I think we've proven that they are the most important, but they're not the only students that we have out there. So, and I'm assuming that you're going to share your perspective of what you would like to hear as a freshman, in orientation as far as a class and how it could be done. So, please.
I was just going to say, I failed to mention this, and I don't know how I skipped over as a student, that we do connect so much better with peers. And I think that it could potentially be extremely beneficial to have peer-based mentoring, mental health help programs in schools across the state at, K through 12 and also post-secondary. I know going into college, there's a program like that exists where there's like a freshman counselor who's a senior who's assigned to like 8 or 10 people. And I've already been in contact with them and they, are checking in on me. And then throughout the year, academic, social, everything, we can go to that person and they can direct us to other resources, but they can also be there for us. And I think that personally, at least, and I think I can speak for other people too, I'm just so much more likely to feel comfortable going to someone like that versus, an authority figure. So.
Okay, so Dr. Edney, last but not least, I think on the roundtable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan Edney, State Health Officer, and that makes me the Director for the Department of Health. So you're telling me I have until noon? Okay.
I'm telling you, you got 5 minutes.
I got it. I can do it.
And Sheriff Togo, if he comes back in as a timekeeper, from one of the classes, who he could probably produce if necessary to do that. So,
well, Mr. Chairman, you're eating into my 5 minutes.
Wait, 5 minutes, 30 seconds.
So, and I'm here today as a state health officer, agency head. There are a lot of things I need to be doing, putting fires out. But as your state health officer, I need to be here, part of this conversation, and also learning. And I'm the guy in the room who is not divorcing mental health from somatic health, because you cannot do it. We're talking about the health of the most important organ of the body, and that's the brain, and the intricacies of that. And we're the unhealthiest population in the country. So there are so many of the answers for this discussion with mental health will benefit the entire health of our population. Primary prevention needs to be what the legislature is focusing on almost all the time. But we are trying so desperately to turn the temperature down on so many problems like mental health. But the real answer is that we've heard multiple times is get upstream and stop it before it starts. And primary prevention here must include education beginning at the youngest ages. John Robert looks like a healthy, fit young man, but he has peers who are not, and we've waited too long. We need to be educating my grandchildren in kindergarten about just basics of health, and then bring in mental health in the right ways at the right time. But I would suggest that the best course is not building another course in the curriculum, but embedding it so that it's part of educating our children. And there are evidence-based curricula that do that. Department of Health is very happy to work in that space with education. But if it's the one thing I could ask for a state health officer above all things, would be to embed health education as primary prevention at the youngest ages that we can. I would tell you a lot. Well, first of all, you said the small bucket of 10 million, but at the health department, that is not a small bucket. That's a lot of money. We can do an awful lot with 10 million. But there's an awful lot we can do with very little investment. So one thing, you have multiple state agencies, several are represented on this task force. I'm the agency head here, but many agencies are represented. And I can tell you there's a lot of collaboration going on between health and the Department of Mental Health, because our jurisdiction goes over into mental health. And Wendy Bailey and I work very closely together. And there's more collaboration, I would say, with state agencies and probably before the pandemic. But as an agency head, I would welcome directives to require us to come together and to bring our resources together, to bring our authority that you delegate to us together. Because I have authority in areas that mental health doesn't have, and vice versa. And I can tell you, you heard some information that was incorrect yesterday. The overdose deaths are about twice what was reported to you, but they're going down. And the last 2 years, we've seen a 5% reduction in opioid deaths, and last year an 8% reduction. And that is because health and mental health and public safety have worked really hard together, as y'all well know, and with the help that the legislature has given us with primary harm prevention. So that's a great example of what we can do when we bring our resources together. And then your agencies, we're the experts of accessing federal money. We have to, it's how we survive. There's not enough state money to do what we're talking about doing. But we have the ability and the expertise to access federal resources that many others won't have. And we need to leverage that for the sake of our people. So I would, and it is helpful at times to get directives and say, we do expect you, and to have statute driving us. I for one take statute extremely seriously. So that collaborative effort is really important across the board. You've heard a lot about universal screening. I'll just quickly say we can do universal screening at no cost. It can actually be a revenue generator. EPSDT, early and periodic screening, diagnostics, and treatment begins with newborns and goes to 21. It's Medicaid covered service, and we're not doing enough of them. And I know a lot of other insurances cover as well, but CMS definitely covers EPSDT. And then the health department, we're stepping up EPSDT work to improve our screening rates for early intervention, but also we're doing a lot of experts, and that's screening, brief intervention, and referral for treatment that you've heard a little bit about, and that's reimbursed by everybody. And there are a lot of partners who can do it. You have to be a provider to do it. So it's not something you can delegate to a school counselor unless they're a provider that can bill for it. But there are ways we can all partner together to draw down mostly federal dollars for these screenings that are really, really important. I would beg you, as you do your good work, that do not forget the least of these. Our brothers and sisters, especially in my part of the world. I have lived in high social vulnerability index counties my whole life. I still live in one. And this will look very different in Tallahatchie County than it will DeSoto or Lafayette. And I know y'all know that, but we have to be intentional about that. And we need to make sure the children of Madison County get everything that Madison County can do for them, but we got to look out. And Mr. Chairman, you nailed it when you said looking at new models of collaboration among school districts, which is what we're having to do with the county health departments and what we're having to do with hospitals. And y'all recognize that with statute 2 years ago of really encouraging collaboration and facilitating collaboration. You don't have to take away school district authority, but you can really push them to come together and bring their resources together to take care of high poverty rate counties just as well as we can our coastal counties. So we just need to make sure at the end of the day, we do what's necessary so the outcomes look the same, and that we don't keep having the disparities that we see so much across the board right now in health. And community health workers, I'm gonna give you that thunder because I was certainly going to put it up there. Low cost ways to get out and attack social determinants of health across the board, and they will work in mental health. And we use them with peer recovery support specialists and substance abuse world. I know that we have them in mental health as well. We just need to translate it over into the rest of public health. And I would just ask that we let the data drive us, which you've heard everybody talk about. And I understand politics. Believe me, I have to understand politics in this job. But if we can just agree to mitigate it as much as we can for the sake of our kids and our young people and our young adults, as we're focusing with this task force, let's let the data drive us more than the politics. I think we can get there. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll share too, your points about the collaboration. They spill over into so many different things. I know you and I several of us worked together this year to try to find, kind of a healthcare solution for the Delta. That legislation didn't move forward this year, but I'm hoping we can revisit that again during our next session because, having those more impoverished communities get areas where they can partner together, I think is key. And I'll share too, when we went back, a few years ago, we were looking at establishing the Office of Workforce Development. A lot of these same issues came up. We learned that you had all these programs for workforce development, but we didn't have any oversight, and we just didn't have the groups talking to each other. So we had this duplication, and that's what led to setting that up. And during this process, what I kind of start thinking after your comments is that, because after we set up the Office of Workforce Development, we determined that over at the Department of Corrections, they were doing, things toward recidivism and workforce development too, but they did not have a connection over. So we set up a deputy director of workforce development within corrections, who then was encouraged very strongly to meet with and talk with the Office of Workforce Development. And so one thing we might think about as a committee here is not setting up another agency, but if Department of Health is, maybe the captain of pulling this together, we might want to look at, getting you a resource leader, under your lead, who is, and again, that's just me thinking off the top of my head, a deputy director of collaborative mental health assessments or whatever it became, if we came up with that, who then would be tasked with meeting with, mental health, would be tasked with meeting with our IHL and community colleges and meeting with just every single resource we've talked about here, and actually making sure that the information gets out there. We might be able to find a creative way to make that happen. Certainly that'd be something I'd want your input on, a lot more before we do that. But I do think that if we think that state agencies are going to collaborate without us giving them a reason to collaborate, I don't think we're recognizing how busy the state agencies are, and it would be like saying that, okay, all 52 senators are going to collaborate every week and talk to each other. Well, that's a great theory, but that's just not going to happen because everybody has a real life and, other things to do here. So I think your points are very crucial to the discussion, and I think something to that order could be considered too.
Mr. Chairman,
if that's
oh, yes, sir.
something you would welcome.
We would very much welcome that. And I would tell you that already Superintendent Evans and myself and Director Bailey are organically doing it. And there is a lot of cross collaboration going on with agency heads now. But this needs to not just be about now. We need to be looking at 10 years from now, when I'm well retired. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So I appreciate everyone's input today. I'll, in closing here, I'll open this up to our two legislators who are here to just share a few comments. We'll keep this very brief. Again, if you want to share for just a few minutes here. I see Senator Bryan. Would you like to share for just a few minutes here?
I just want to thank everybody for coming. It's good to get a group of people in a room to sit and discuss and hear perspectives and think. And then just speaking for myself, I usually need to go off and ruminate for a while. But it's a very useful process, and I appreciate everyone's participation.
Senator Board, you have a few anecdotes to add?
No, I would echo what Senator Bryan said. Y'all have given definite food
Can you
for
can you
thought.
say that again?
I agree with Senator Bryan.
Thank you. You can stop right there.
No, please continue.
I especially want to thank our youth task force member. Your insight has been wonderful. And I'm so appreciative of you for taking up your summer and doing this before you go away to college. So I'm thankful for Zoom too, so you can jump on a few of those between classes if we have another meeting. I'm very grateful to you. I look forward to seeing great things from you in the future. So, but with that, I'm also too need to think and process through what you said.
And then really, Dr. Edney, too, thank you. You've been so good to collaborate and really us think about how that we need to really open those lines of communication, because it does seem like we have a lot of things working in silos. And it's a consistent thing that every time we have a task force that we see that we are siloed. And we have resources here that nobody knows to take advantage of. So I think that's going forward is how that we ease that communication and then get it out to the public that actually needs it. So those are the things that I'm kind of ruminating on right now. So thank y'all very much for all your time.
And I know we've got, a couple people online who weren't able to be here in person. At our next meeting, we may take just a few minutes to allow them to share some thoughts too. I think it's better for us to close kind of meeting in the room here, instead of pulling in the technology at the end. Just in looking at things here, what I'd like to kind of suggest here is that we're going to try to take a lot of the takeaways and things that were mentioned today, try to get that into some form of a document, so that we can have that to look at and kind of discuss more. And so at our next meeting, we might have one speaker, we might have two, we might not have any, we may just do more discussion. We are already at a point in the legislature where I'm looking at a calendar of potential meetings and hearings that is becoming very large. And so I'm gonna make a suggestion that we set a meeting for September the 18th, which is that Wednesday, and do it at our normal time of 2 o'clock and not schedule the Thursday, because I believe Senator Bryan may have a meeting that he's considering too, that I've heard from outside people. And it might work where we do the work of this task force, and if it works out with his schedule, we might be able to, allow the freedom of the room, for other scheduling purposes. So if everyone's okay with September the 18th, the Wednesday at 2 o'clock being our next meeting, the agenda would be to try to put this into more concrete recommendations. Well, the way I can envision it is hopefully we'll have a lot of the points that have come up that we lay out, and we can go through there and talk about, okay, are these things we want to recommend, or are these things we don't want to recommend? And then also expound on those and add, comment and other things to those that are laid out. I think we had a very good summary today by one of our committee members to start on that. So any questions or concerns about that type of format for the next meeting? Again, we'll just set it as just the one Wednesday afternoon for right now. And if it gets beyond that, we can certainly add another day, another time, but I think we can hopefully get to the summation point here. So any questions or concerns about that format from the group? Okay, so, and does that date look possible? I'll ask Ms. Smith, if the 18th is, okay, well, so if it looks good right now, we're gonna go ahead and schedule it, so as long as it looks good right now, then we'll go ahead and lock that down. And then that still opens, to, some of the Senator Bryan's work and other things. He's considered additional time during the week there. And so if that date is good, any other questions or concerns today? I know yes, Deborah. Yeah, so we've got compilers, including myself and Senator Boyd. I think Ms. Smith has been compiling too, but like before, the good thing today is I think you added some of your takeaways, but if you have more takeaways, continue to send those to Deborah. We're going to try to get that into, she's already got a good document going, but we're going to try to make that look a little better before the next meeting and actually try to come out with some recommendations. So any other bookkeeping needs that we have? So if not, is there a motion? Supervisor report. Thank you all.